321. Kakashi's new move. After finishing his first S-rank teaching evaluation, Mu Yue received an enormous reward: Yin Release Chakra Nature Transformation Mastery and Yang Release Chakra Nature Transformation Mastery. The bounty was generous, 2 mastery-level nature transformations at once, and they were the very special Yin and Yang natures. A flood of memories about practicing Yin and Yang chakra transformation poured into Mu Yue's mind. After sorting through them, he opened his status panel. Name: Hayate Mugetsu, Chakra, 66,500 skills. Fire Release Chakra, Nature Transformation, Perfect, 120,80,000. Water Release Chakra, Nature Transformation, Mastery, 8,000, 15,000. Wind Release Chakra, Nature Transformation, Mastery, 7,800. Yin Release Chakra, Nature Transformation, Mastery 0. Yang Release Chakra, Nature Transformation, Mastery 0. Because Mu Yue had changed his strategy for farming rewards, his chakra accumulation had slowed a bit, but it was still impressive. He estimated that by the end of the school year, his total chakra could reach 90,000, or maybe even 100,000. Even if recovery was a little slower, having a large pool felt comfortable. Seeing that both Yin and Yang transformations showed 0 proficiency made Mu Yue pause. He couldn't tell why. His first 3 mastery-level nature transformation rewards had come with half proficiency, but these did not. Is it because Yin and Yang are special, or is it some beginner protection period? He wondered. Guesses wouldn't prove anything. He'd have to wait until the next mastery-level reward to verify. Still, Mu Yue was very satisfied. Some people might spend their whole lives cultivating a single nature transformation to mastery. He just taught a class and gotten 2. The next day, Mu Yue kept the same teaching rhythm as the first, with a few content tweaks. After a morning of systematic lectures, nothing happened, and the rewards only settled after the afternoon class ended. Completed a quality lecture. Evaluation: S. Received reward. Taijutsu ability slightly increased. Fire release +8, earth release 45, lightning release 35, wind release +10, water release +15. Mu Yue felt a little disappointed. He'd spent the day pushing Group C through taijutsu drills, hoping for a reward that would strengthen their bodies, but only their taijutsu stat increased. Still, overall, the rewards were generous. If this kept up, by the end of the special training, his lightning and earth release might also reach mastery. Then he'd have 6 mastery-level nature transformations and 1 perfect level. After 2 days, he'd figured out the S-rank evaluation mechanics. Many participants, high lecture quality, and long duration. The rewards corresponded to what you taught, very different from previous evaluations, where A-rank returns were often a random 1 or 2 ninjutsu. That made S-rank rewards far more useful. For example, the upcoming medical specialists would be a prime chance to aim for an S and help him develop a reliable power bank. The rewards were great, but Mu Yue was exhausted. He returned too tired to study and needed to rest. As the special training progressed, the paused chuunin exams were about to resume. Nara Shiosui and Asuma, who were examinees, had asked Mu Yue for leave in advance. The third stage of the chuunin exams was on Tuesday and required special training. Considering everyone wanted to watch, Mu Yue gave them the day off. Of course it would be made up. Saturday would not be a day off, and Sunday would be. August 4th, the day before the chuunin exams. With the exams so close, Mu Yue's disciples didn't relax at all. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Uchiha Obito's body burned with fierce orange-yellow flames, each punch and kick carrying a high-temperature, heavy strike. Any sweat that appeared instantly evaporated. From morning until afternoon, he drilled the fire-release ninjutsu Mu Yue had taught, cycling his breathing technique to the point of exhaustion in hopes of a breakthrough. The combined pressure of Metkai 8 gates and rock breathing, Kakashi's divinely aid, instant kill of the Jonin, and Mei Terumi waiting in the 4 finals weighed on him. Obito didn't want to lose, not to Kakashi, not to Guy, not to anyone. Most of his 9 years had been spent at the bottom. Now that he'd finally turned things around, he wanted to keep winning. Winning for Mu Yue, for Rin Nohara, for Kakashi. He wanted everyone to know that Uchiha Obito was not inferior to anyone. Bang! Bang! Around Metkai, trees and boulders split and shattered under his immense strength. Neither thick trunks nor hard rock could withstand his kicks. He pushed his body hard, trying to reach the limit of the gate of life combined with rock breathing. The last battle with the Mist Village Jonin had shown him he was still far from the fourth gate. He didn't want to collapse powerlessly in the next match and be forced to watch his teammates fight. He wanted to become a strong chuunin. Two ninjas who had mocked his father had come to apologize, but there were far more who had sneered at him, those he knew and those he didn't, in public and in secret. He intended to slap them in the face with this chuunin exam. The son of the ninja they looked down upon would become a chuunin within months of graduating and be stronger than them. Near the river, Rin Nohara practiced water release while maintaining water breathing. Under her chakra, the river water gathered into a water dragon, spun under her control, then crashed back down. Immediately after the water dragon, she formed hand signs and cast water prison, creating a large bubble on the river's surface. Since water release was easier by the river, Rin had been training non-stop there. She knew she was behind. Her time learning water release had been short, so she practiced relentlessly to raise her proficiency. Everyone's so good. I can't fall behind. I need to work hard to win the first round, Rin thought as her chakra ran low. She knew her strength couldn't match Obito or the others. Reaching the 8 gates would be a success. She only hoped she wouldn't become a burden to Obito and Kakashi, and that she could help her teammates in battle. Lightning breathing, full concentration. Kakashi pushed his breathing technique to its limit, eyes locked on a specialized wooden dummy. Crackling lightning erupted from his toes and wrapped his legs. The lightning release chakra activated his cells, boosting his explosive power. With a thunderous rush he struck. The wooden dummy split down the middle and fell. Humph, Kakashi exhaled. As expected, still not enough. I can use flash, but the new move won't come out. He closed his eyes and replayed the feeling. Though he hadn't fully mastered Transparent World, his perception had improved significantly, allowing him to react to flash now. The real problem was that, after that battle, the upper limit of his breathing technique had skyrocketed and his swordsmanship had advanced as if he'd had an epiphany. Flash was no longer his fastest or strongest move. Recalling the thunderous sensation when he rushed out, Kakashi named the new technique Lightning Flash. Lightning Flash was a move he developed by combining the feeling of Transparent World with his swordsmanship. It had immense power and incredible speed, and its only drawback was high chakra consumption. The reason he couldn't react to it wasn't the move's fault. It was his. If he could activate Transparent World reliably, there would be no problem. But Transparent World was even harder than the Demon Slayer mark. It wasn't something one learned quickly. In the past month, he hadn't once entered the complete Transparent World state. I'll keep trying. With my current strength, I can't guarantee a win against them. Kakashi didn't lose heart. His goal, Metkai, Uchiha Obito, Shisui, remained. He wanted to defeat each of the 3 who had beaten him. Shisui hadn't appeared in action lately, so Kakashi left him for later. For now, Obito and Guy were the main threats, especially Obito with the Sharingan. If Kakashi used moves Obito couldn't react to, Obito would quickly find weaknesses. At 6 o'clock everyone, go back and rest early. Pushing too hard tomorrow will only hurt your performance, Mu Yue's shadow clone announced. Seeing how diligent his students had become made Mu Yue pleased. When they first arrived, only Metkai had been that driven. Shisui, while not lazy, lacked this kind of intensity, and Obito had shifted from looking forward to holidays to using them to train. At the clone's words, everyone stopped. They knew the rule, but had been so absorbed in training they lost track of time. The disciples rested together for a bit. Everyone was too tired to chat, even usually talkative Obito. After a few words of mutual encouragement, they dispersed. Only Shisui kept training. He was still an academy student and had more to learn. How did everyone improve so much? Shisui wondered as he trained, feeling the pressure. The day wound down, exhausted but determined. The chuunin exams tomorrow would test everything they'd been pushing toward. 322. The third exam begins on August 5th. The chuunin exams officially began. The third stage was held in a huge circular arena. The central fighting area was vast, with a few clumps of trees and several small ponds holding a limited amount of water. This was where all the examinees would do battle. Surrounding the combat zone were tiered spectator stands filled with nobles, wealthy merchants, local Konoha residents, and ninja. The third Hokage didn't sit with the crowd. He had a special box one tier above the stands. So many people, Rin Nohara breathed, staring at the sea of faces. The liveliest event she'd ever attended before had been a festival, and it hadn't come close to this. Don't get nervous, Rin. Just do your best and you'll win, Obito said, misreading her expression as anxiety. Rin covered her mouth and chuckled softly. Obito, you're underestimating me. I don't get nervous just because people are watching. Rin wasn't a shy girl. She might worry if an opponent seemed too strong, but being observed by a crowd didn't faze her. Obito grinned and scratched his head. He cared even less about the audience. The more people there were, the more excited he got. This was his chance to make a name for himself in Konoha. Let's go. It's almost time, Kakashi reminded them. The three picked up their pace and moved through a special corridor for examinees into the arena. They arrived neither too early nor too late. 3 minutes after they reached the combat area, all 16 examinees had gathered. Some spectators cheered at the sight, eager for the matches to begin. Did you hear that? The cheers are all for you. Today, you're the main attraction, Baruhu said with a smile. Obito felt a surge of excitement. If he could take first place in front of everyone, it would be his first step toward becoming Hokage. Might Guy's face split into a confident grin as he gave a thumbs up to a green-clad figure, excitedly jumping in the stands. Mei Terumi clenched her fists. Winning first place would draw the elders and the Mizukage's attention and clear her path to leadership. Zabuza watched Kakashi, who stood only a few paces away, with a complicated look. If he won his match, Kakashi would be his next opponent. Zabuza didn't know how to beat someone who had once defeated his Jonin instructor. The rules for the third stage are simple, Baruhu announced. As in the preliminaries, you win by defeating your opponent until they can no longer fight or they surrender. If there are no questions, examinees number 1 and 2, please stay to prepare for battle. All other examinees, return to the waiting room and await your notification. The waiting room had a view of the arena, so it wouldn't stop anyone from observing the fights. No one asked further questions. The rules were straightforward. The examinees filed out in pairs, leaving only Kasame Hoshigaki, examinee number 1, and Aoba Yamashiro, number 2, on the field. Kasame stood expressionless. In this exam, he cared about only 2 people, Might Guy and Kakashi. He felt confident about all the other matches. Aoba, by contrast, looked tense. He had watched Kasame's performance in the preliminaries and knew he was one of the strongest competitors. Baruhu had them take their positions. After about a minute, he raised his voice so the arena's amplification carried it to every corner. First match, Kasame Hoshigaki versus Aoba Yamashiro. Begin! Conversations in the stands died down, and all attention turned to the combat area. Kasame Hoshigaki is from the Hidden Mist, an official nearby remarked. We don't see many mist ninja on the mainland. Being from the land of water, traveling here must be a hassle, another sighed. Still, our land of fire ninja should be stronger. Those around him nodded. Konoha's record of victories had bred confidence, but that didn't change the reality of the matchup. Aoba was no match for Kasame's power. At Baruhu's command, Aoba took a step back and used ninjutsu to summon a huge flock of crows. Their harsh cawing filled the arena as they spiraled around him, blocking Kasame's sight and skewing his hearing. Aoba hurled several shuriken at Kasame, but Kasame casually swung his long sword and deflected them. He plunged the blade into the ground and formed hand seals. Water release, exploding water colliding wave. A torrent of water surged out as Kasame performed a water-nature transformation. Aoba frowned and retreated, ordering his crows to fly higher. Kasame's volume of water was enormous. In no time, the combat area had been turned into a pond. Aoba managed to stay on the surface, but he could only struggle to keep Kasame at bay. Bang! Punches and jabs exchanged. Even with the crows obstructing him, Aoba was pushed back repeatedly. The flooded terrain favored Kasame. He could dive under the surface to avoid attacks that Aoba couldn't reach well, and Aoba had no effective way to deal significant damage. What a terrible draw, Aoba thought, helpless. He specialized in fire release, which matched poorly against Kasame's water techniques. After a few exchanges, Kasame assessed his opponent. Not weak, he thought. Aoba was solid all around, if not outstanding. Water release, water dragon bullet technique. Because there was so much water, Kasame condensed a giant water dragon without expending much chakra and sent it barreling toward Aoba. The crows were swept aside by the blast. Fire release, great fireball technique. Aoba countered desperately. He spat a great fireball to meet the water dragon, then used his remaining crows to shield himself. Holding his breath, he dove beneath the surface and swam toward Kasame. Aoba had tried to use the collision between the fireball and the water dragon to cover his approach, but he had underestimated Kasame's battlefield experience. Kasame detected him anyway and feigned ignorance. The instant Aoba came close, Kasame erupted from the water and engaged him full force. A massive splash sent Aoba flying backward, blasted clean out of the pond. Before Aoba could land, Kasame drove a stream of pressurized water at him. It struck him and slammed him into the arena wall. To most spectators, it had all happened in the space of a few minutes. A water release transformed the field into a pond, the two exchanged blows, elemental techniques collided, then one competitor was hurled into the wall. The result, however, was unmistakable. It seems the Mist Ninja are exceptional, far from ordinary, the official who had been confident about Fire Ninja admitted, stroking his beard with a new respect. They must have sent a top talent. Some wealthy merchants nearby nodded approvingly at Kasame's display. The hidden mist contingent smiled, while many Konoha ninja in the stands watched with stony faces. Losing the first match was a blow. Danzo, sitting to Hiruzen Sarutobi's right, scowled. Even knowing Aoba's defeat was not due to weakness but to Kasame's overwhelming skill, Danzo saw the loss as an embarrassment to Konoha. The elder to Hiruzen's left only showed a faint smile and said nothing more. Hiruzen sat with his usual unreadable expression. "Kasame Hoshigaki wins," Buruhu declared once it was clear Aoba could no longer fight. Medical Ninja rushed out to attend to Aoba while Kasame walked back to the waiting room. "Rin, you can do it!" Obito cheered as the first match ended. Kakashi stepped up beside Rin and spoke quietly. "Use a lot of water release early. You'll have a terrain advantage at the start." Although the arena's drainage system slowly removed the water, it was clear it would take time. So long as the battle didn't drag on, the remaining water could favor someone who used water techniques. Rin replied with a smile and a nod. Second match, Rin Nohara versus Nara Shiosui. "Examinees, enter the arena." Buruhu's voice echoed into the waiting room. Rin waved to Kakashi and Obito and stepped forward. Inuzuka Midori cheered for Nara Shiosui as he headed for the combat area. Nara had been unable to gather much information about Rin during his special training with Mu Yue, but his taijutsu had improved a bit there. He nodded and walked toward the arena. The stage was set for the next round. Chapter 323, Metgai's Terrifying Strength. Keep your distance. Don't let him control you with the shadow imitation technique. Rin Nohara revised her strategy again as she approached the arena. Having once fought alongside Nara Shiosui, she knew how dangerous that technique could be. Being controlled, even briefly, could decide a match. She wondered how long Shiosui could hold someone under normal circumstances. If it was only a couple of seconds longer than Akami Hideyuki's control, it wouldn't end a one-on-one fight outright, only give an edge. Besides, with the shadow imitation technique, Shiosui couldn't directly strike the puppet. He had to use the environment to cause damage. If his control time wasn't long, Rin could afford to be more aggressive. She knew medical ninjutsu and could handle minor injuries. Knowledge mattered. Even if she suspected a possibility, she wouldn't gamble. The wrong bet meant elimination. Nara Shiosui was doing the same, reviewing everything he knew about Rin. A punch that can repel even Kasame. If she hits me with that, I'm in trouble. He wanted her to come within range and be controlled by his technique. But combat changed in an instant. He couldn't always wait for the perfect opening, so he needed contingency plans. Both of them moved onto the arena using chakra to walk on the water. Once they took their positions, Buruhu quickly announced the start of the second match. The moment the match began, Rin entered a water-breathing stance, immediately retreating to widen the gap while throwing shuriken. She didn't know the maximum range of Shiosui's shadow imitation technique, so she kept as far back as possible. Shiosui neither advanced nor fled. He threw shuriken from his place as well. Their shuriken skills were decent but not lethal. Neither made an impact. Shiosui stepped forward without hurry. In Rin's fight against the hidden mist, she hadn't used effective long-range techniques, so Shiosui only needed to shrink her dodging space until it fell inside his shadow range. Water release, water dragon bullet technique. Shiosui's plan fell apart. As he closed the distance, Rin formed hand signs and released water release, drawing in water that coalesced into a snarling water dragon. Shiosui's expression changed instantly. He hadn't counted on Rin having mastered water release, certainly not to this level. He guessed she'd learned new jutsu during her month off, otherwise she wouldn't have used it in her crucial match with the hidden mist. This was bad news. Since Kisame had once turned the previous fight into a big pond, operating with water release in a watery environment drained less chakra and hit far harder. Even the normally calm Shiosui felt the frustration. His opponent had opened with massive buffs. Who wouldn't be annoyed? He still lacked a proper defensive jutsu. All he could do was use movement and terrain to reduce damage, but he inevitably took hits and looked disheveled. Rin, that's how you do it. Obito shouted excitedly from the lounge as Rin seized the advantage. Kakashi simply nodded. Rin had practically won this match. Shiosui was primarily a support-type shinobi. Solo fights weren't his specialty. Looks like the chuunin responsibility may fall to Midori. Inuzuka Midori muttered. She hoped her teammate could still pull through, but Shiosui was at a severe disadvantage and couldn't even fight back properly. Shiosui wiped water from his face and panted, staring at Rin as his mind worked frantically for a way to break the situation. Without defensive ninjutsu, there seemed no opening. He could only rely on movement and the environment. Then a small shadow drifted across the water near him. He looked up and saw a bird circling above. A spark lit in his eyes. He had an idea. Shadow imitation technique. Shiosui formed hand signs and launched the technique. A black shadow rushed toward Rin. Rin, who was forming hand signs herself, thought she'd entered his range and dodged backward. To her surprise, the shadow stopped 3 meters away, well short of her new position. As he fainting? Rin didn't advance. The cautious medic assumed Shiosui was trying to bait her into misjudging his range. Seeing the shadow stop harmlessly, Shiosui retracted it with a rueful look and slipped behind a tree. Rin, suspecting a trap, formed a water clone and kept it hidden nearby. Mu Yue had taught her water clone during her recent training, and she'd picked it up quickly. The water clone was simpler than a shadow clone and less effective away from water, but useful for deception and defense. Water release, water dragon bullet technique. Rin tried to continue pressuring him. The trees on the field could hide his form, but weren't strong enough to stop jutsu. Shiosui suddenly leapt out again and used the shadow imitation technique. The shadow swept toward her the same way as before, and Rin, cautious, began to retreat, but again the shadow stopped short. Then he canceled it. Stalling. He was stalling for the water to drain, Rin realized as she watched the water level recede. She stepped back to her previous position, the farthest she could go and still control the water dragon bullet, and continued gathering chakra. Shiosui didn't sit idle. Though he wasn't using jutsu, he continued hurling kunai, none of which hit. Then the water dragon she had formed smashed through the trees behind which Shiosui hid, sending him splashing into the water. Shiosui quickly clambered up and spat water from his mouth, smiling as he eyed the small black shadow bobbing on the water's surface. Water release. Rin continued her preparations. Shadow imitation technique. Shiosui used it again. This time, Rin ignored the stopping shadow and kept building the water dragon. Another hit would likely finish him. The distance between them was long. If he could reach her now with the shadow imitation technique, he could have reached her earlier. As expected, his shadow halted at the same previous limit, until something unexpected happened. A small black object drifted onto Shiosui's shadow. Whoosh! His shadow suddenly extended and pierced into the area of Rin's shadow. Rin looked up in surprise and saw the reason. A kunai with a makeshift parachute dangling in the sky. That improvised parachute had given Shiosui's shadow a foothold to extend beyond its normal range. A faint smile touched Shiosui's face. "You have the advantage of water. I have the fortune of wind," he murmured. Hidden behind a tree, he had torn his clothes and fashioned a crude parachute. Seizing the moment when Rin concentrated on her jutsu, he'd thrown a deciding kunai into the air. If the wind had been a little stronger or had shifted, the plan would have failed. This time fate had compensated for his disadvantaged terrain. Only a ninja would appreciate what he had pulled off. He's talented, but his opponent is just too cautious. Nara Shikaku shook his head. Had he controlled her earlier, he'd have finished it. Akimichi Choza added, understanding the shadow imitation technique. Before Inoichi Yamanaka could elaborate, the field changed again. As the shadows merged, Rin's condensed water scattered, and Shiosui began manipulating her movements, forcing her to walk toward the stone wall. His plan was to make her hit hard enough to faint. For him, it would be a blow to empty air. For her, it would be a strike against solid stone. But at that moment, Rin's hidden water clone sprung into action. Water prison technique. The clone condensed a spherical water prison that enclosed Rin's original body. Shiosui's face tightened. When he'd been behind the tree, he'd lost sight of her and didn't know she'd made a clone. Logically, Rin had wasted chakra with that clone, but now it was precisely the saving grace he hadn't expected. He tried to use the shadow-controlled body to smash the water sphere with everything he had, but Rin's incredible strength came from her monstrous strength ninjutsu, not her natural physical power. Shiosui couldn't channel that technique through the puppet, so his blows didn't even ripple the prison. Cold sweat ran down his brow. He had to cancel his shadow imitation technique, or the water clone would strike him. The moment he did, the water clone released its prison. Rin burst out with chakra, and both the original and the clone attacked Shiosui from different angles. I surrender. Injured and nearly out of chakra, Shiosui realized he had no chance and gave up. Baruhu announced the victor. Rin Nohara wins. The crowd applauded both competitors. If the first match had been a display of raw power, this one had been a contest of caution and wit. Without that water clone, Rin's big advantage could easily have turned into a loss. Look, Rin won, a middle-aged couple cheered. Minato watched proudly, yet a bit humbled. In teaching, I can't match Mu Yue, he admitted. Rin had learned water release to such a degree in a month. That was impressive. Hiruzen asked if Mu Yue had been helping her during the chuunin exams. Minato confirmed it. He'd helped where he could, but Mu Yue had provided the core training in water release that Minato didn't know well. In the lounge, Obito greeted Rin as she entered. See? I told you you'd be fine. Thanks to your encouragement, I felt more confident. Rin smiled, happy after giving her all and winning. Baruhu's voice echoed again. The third battle is about to begin. Noguchi Nobuhide versus Metkai. Please enter the arena and prepare for battle. It's time to unleash youth. Metkai pumped his fists. With his father in the stands, he wanted to show everything he had. Noguchi Nobuhide, Meitermi's teammate who'd survived the death forest, looked more restrained. He'd seen what Metkai could do. Even Kasame had been bloodied by him. But Nobuhide could not back down. Metkai grinned at Kakashi on his way out. My rival, don't lose before you face me. Kakashi only replied calmly, then just wait to be defeated by me. Metkai chuckled and strode toward the arena. Metodai leapt to his feet in the crowd, shouting proudly, That's my son, Metkai! He's super strong! The audience smiled. You couldn't miss the bright green jumpsuit and those thick brows. A hidden mist shinobi nearby bristled, thinking the boast premature. Metodai ignored him and simply watched anxiously. Battle start! Baruhu cried. Most of the water on the field had receded. A few puddles remained. Metkai wasted no time. 8 gates. First gate, open. Gate of healing, open. Gate of life, open, he roared. Rock breathing, full concentration. He poured his body's power into his thighs and opened his strength to the max. A sudden blast of force swept from him, scattering the standing water and creating a gust that stunned the audience. Nobuhide forced down his fear and formed hand signs for a water release. Extreme Leaf Hurricane. Nobuhide's water release was instantly shattered by a lightning-fast whirlwind kick from Metkai. The kick sent Nobuhide flying. He spat blood and slammed into the arena wall, embedding himself in the stone. Silence fell. The crowd hadn't expected such a quick finish. Even Baruhu had been taken aback. It had been less than half a minute, maybe less than 20 seconds, since the start. Baruhu recovered and announced the result. Might Guy wins! The hidden mist shinobi who had scoffed lowered his head in embarrassment at the one-hit knockout. Mito Dai simply beamed with pride, celebrating his son's overwhelming victory. Chapter 324, The Pressure of Naruto's Son. This must be the Land of Fire's genius ninja, the Land of Fire official said with a smile as he watched Might Guy instantly defeat the hidden mist combatant. Kisame had won easily too, but Might Guy's single-kick knockout made a far bigger impression. As expected, Konoha's ninjas are superior. He must be the strongest among the contestants, someone in the crowd murmured. To ordinary onlookers, Might Guy had simply charged, and then suddenly Noguchi Nobuhide was down. They didn't even realize when Guy closed the distance, his speed had been blinding. No one doubted it. With a performance like that, Might Guy was the standout of the chuunin exams. Is the perennial Jonin's son really this strong? Some ninjas who knew Mito Dai muttered, rubbing their eyes in disbelief. Many had looked down on Mito Dai and his family. They could not have imagined his son possessing such power. Their idle assumptions were being slapped down by reality. Guy's display made it clear he wasn't just strong, he could finish a fight in under 30 seconds. Genshi's smile faded. Noguchi had been defeated too quickly, not even landing a block, an embarrassing loss for Hidden Mist. Hiruzen Sarutobi watched with a faint, unreadable smile and stayed silent. Looking toward the stands, Might Guy deactivated the 8 gates and eased back out of his breathing technique, a triumphant grin on his face. He wanted to make his father proud today. The fourth battle, Kurosawa versus Inuzuka Midori. Contestants, enter the arena. Back in the resting room, Baruhu announced the next match. Inuzuka Midori steadied herself. Mentally, she cheered on her own behalf. Aburame now had fallen in the preliminaries, and Nara Shiosui had been eliminated by Rin Nohara in the second round. Now Midori was the only one left from her team. She'd fought Kurosawa before, and knew the Hidden Mist ninja was no joke. She didn't want to fall here. If 2 of them reached the third round, at least one should make it into the second round. Losing everyone in the top 16 would look bad. Kurosawa rose calmly and walked toward the arena, showing little concern. He wasn't really a genin. Aside from monsters like Kisame and Might Guy, he didn't expect to lose to anyone. Obito, who had fought alongside Midori before, called out, "Little Midori, go for it." "Inuzuka or Midori, not Little Midori," she snapped, turning her head. "Okay, Midori," Obito said, half teasing. Midori nearly wanted to punch him for not taking her seriously, but she didn't argue further and walked onto the battleground. "Why don't you surrender? It'll spare you the pain. You'll lose anyway," Kurosawa said coolly. Midori's jaw tightened, and she glared at him. The old grudge from the Death Forest flared up. Anger surged through her, and she swore she would take a bite out of Kurosawa, if nothing else. Shiramaru on her shoulder sensed it and bared his fangs. "Battle start!" Midori immediately used beast mimicry ninjutsu, crouched low, and Shiramaru shifted to match her posture before piling on. "Pointless resistance," Kurosawa murmured, forming hand signs. "Hidden Mist technique." Thick mist poured across the arena, shrouding both fighters. Spectators murmured in confusion. How could they watch now? "Guess which part I'll attack first. Heart, thigh, head, arm." Kurosawa's voice echoed ghost-like through the haze. But Midori was unfazed. The Inuzuka clan's techniques were the perfect answer to mist concealment. She sniffed, pinpointed Kurosawa's location, and surged forward with Shiramaru. Despite being outnumbered, the experienced Kurosawa calmly met their assault. Is this just luck? Kurosawa wondered. Midori kept finding his position as he tried body flicker technique to reposition. Realizing the mist was helping his opponent, Kurosawa canceled his hidden mist technique. He switched to water release and sword play. Midori fought hard. Though she was the strongest within her team at one-on-one combat, Kurosawa, an established chuunin, pushed her back. Blood showed on her sky, but she refused to quit. She adopted a trade damage approach. Instead of dodging, she attacked when Kurosawa struck, using his openings. Eventually, she managed to grab his sword, and Shiramaru used fang over fang to slice Kurosawa's right leg. Seeing him wounded, Midori collapsed, satisfied. If she'd been stronger, she could have done more, but this was the most she could offer now. "Winner, Kurosawa," Baruhu announced. Kurosawa glared down at Midori, but didn't press the attack. He wasn't thrilled by the victory. What bragging rights were there for a chuunin defeating a genin? What worried him was his next opponent, Metkai. He wouldn't want to be badly hurt when facing that kind of monster. Medics quickly took the injured Midori away. Kurosawa went to the examinee's area to treat his wounds. Watching Kurosawa's win, Genshi's expression softened slightly. Hidden Mist had taken 2 of the 3 matches so far, still an advantage. 5th battle, Uchiha Obito versus Asuma Sarutobi. Asuma Sarutobi, the 3rd Hokage's son, he's old enough to be in the chuunin exams. I haven't heard of Uchiha Obito. The Hokage's son should win, right? Most of the crowd sided with Asuma, not because they knew his techniques, but because he was Hiruzen Sarutobi's son. It felt only natural for the Hokage's child to win. Anything else would be embarrassing. Uchiha Inaho bristled at the dismissive comments. He'd already been bested by Obito and knew how strong Obito was, certainly not someone to underestimate. Uchiha Yashiro was calm. Obito might not match the monster's Kasame or Metkai, but defeating Asuma should pose no problem. If Asuma really were that outstanding, his reputation would be widespread already. On the battlefield, Asuma heard the crowd's expectations as a background hum. He'd grown up with them, win as expected, or be judged to have failed at training. He didn't want to lose, not for the crowd, but for people who mattered to him. He didn't want Mu Yue's lessons to look wasted, and he didn't want Hiruzen to see him fall easily. He pictured a familiar blonde figure in the stands with a gentle smile and resolved to do his best. Tsunade, listening to the matchup, remarked bluntly that Obito would crush Asuma. Mu Yue asked why, and Jiraiya, unable to resist teasing Tsunade, started to joke, then stopped when he saw Tsunade's hand curl into a slowly rising fist. He swallowed the rest of his words. Battle start! Obito immediately adopted total concentration breathing, speeding up his fire-release chakra nature transformation. He didn't engage flame-breathing chakra mode yet. That would drain too much. First, he wanted to gauge Asuma. Asuma, in turn, entered a state of basic breathing to boost his own performance. Asuma drew 3 kunai and, using wind nature transformation, infused them with wind release before throwing them at Obito. Obito responded with fire release, Great Fireball technique. The Great Fireball met the wind-imbued kunai head-on and knocked them harmlessly to the ground. Asuma dodged rather than confronting the fire directly. Obito surged forward, but Asuma had not been idle in the past month. He deepened his mastery of wind nature transformation under Mu Yue and learned wind-boosting movement techniques. With that speed boost, he managed to avoid falling behind. On the surface, the fight seemed even, but Asuma quickly realized Obito's taijutsu had grown formidable. When Obito activated his Sharingan, his eyes glinting crimson as 2 Tomoe spun, his perception sharpened. Mistakes in Asuma's attacks became clear, and he began to be pushed back. A guard glanced toward Hiruzen, but the 3rd Hokage's expression remained steady and unchanged. Around the field, hushed whispers noted how the Uchiha had suppressed the Hokage's son. Uchiha Fugaku watched Obito's advancement and nodded slightly. In his view, Obito's promotion to chuunin was all but certain. If Obito became a chuunin, he could join the police force and receive prime guidance, something Uchiha Yashiro regretted that Obito had previously refused. Etched in taijutsu, Asuma switched tactics. He used wind nature transformation to burst away and create distance, preparing to rely on ninjutsu. He suspected that without a wind-release ninjutsu to even the field, he would be defeated by Obito's close-quarters skill. Obito, unable to catch him without risking a direct wind attack, also formed hand signs. He was preparing to counter with fire-release ninjutsu. Chapter 325, Kakashi displays the White Fang style. Wind release, vacuum bullet. Asuma moved with practiced speed, gathering chakra for a wind-release nature transformation and spitting out transparent blasts of air toward Obito. Fire release, Phoenix Sage fire technique. Obito concentrated a great deal of chakra in his throat and released a volley of fireballs. Boom, the air blasts and fireballs met in a continuous series of explosions. Both fighters kept up their output, and the arena floor soon pockmarked with small craters. Obito's fireballs outnumbered and outpowered Asuma's vacuum spheres. Before long, Asuma was caught in several detonations and suffered a few minor wounds, not life-threatening, but enough to disrupt his ninjutsu. With his vacuum sphere gone to absorb some of the incoming fire, 5 or 6 small fireballs broke free and streaked straight for Asuma. He had to expend chakra in wind release to accelerate and dodge, but Obito's Sharingan saw straight through the evasion. Whoosh! Obito flashed and materialized where Asuma would land, driving a powerful punch into him. Bang! Even with his wind release speed, Asuma couldn't avoid the blow. He was sent flying. It was obvious now to anyone watching, Obito held the clear advantage. He was superior in taijutsu and in ninjutsu. The fight was a one-sided suppression. As expected, it's still not enough. Obito's growth is simply absurd, Raido Namiyashi muttered, watching the battle and feeling a pang of regret for Asuma. Asuma had worked hard, his strength had improved. The problem wasn't Asuma's weakness so much as Obito's overwhelming strength. Raido thought Asuma would have had no trouble advancing to the second round unless he faced Kasame, Metkai, Kakashi, or Obito. Unfortunately, fate had paired him with one of them. There's still hope. Didn't Asuma say he practiced a combination ninjutsu? Obito can't have mastered 2 nature transformations, can he? Kurenai Yuhi tried to hold on to optimism. Mid-air, Asuma hurled a chakra-enhanced shuriken, forcing the charging Obito to take a step back. Shadow clone technique. Landing with wind release's help, Asuma formed hand seals and produced a shadow clone. He couldn't beat Obito with fire release. Obito's fire was simply stronger, or with wing release alone, because fire release countered wind release in a nature clash. Asuma's last card was combination ninjutsu, the ability to combine 2 nature transformations. Over the past month, besides learning the cyclone technique, Mu Yue had taught him how to blend wind and fire to unleash their full potential. Fire release secret technique, great fire technique, called the clone. Wind release, cyclone, Asuma answered with his main body's wind release. The shadow clone used the Sarutobi clan's secret technique, spewing fierce, blinding flames, while Asuma's main body exhaled a powerful wind that fanned the inferno into a sea of fire. The cyclone perfectly amplified the great fire technique's destructive heat. He's certainly learned your specialty, Danzo remarked, glancing at Hiruzen Sarutobi. Combination ninjutsu was Hiruzen's forte. While most combined 2 elements, Hiruzen could blend 5. He knew the great fire technique in the cyclone, but he was surprised that Asuma had mastered cyclone. Hiruzen had not personally taught it. It must have been Mu Yue, Hiruzen said, deducing quickly. He'd been too burdened with official duties to instruct Asuma closely. His sporadic guidance had clearly been insufficient. The quality of Asuma's growth suggested he had learned elsewhere. Rin Nohara watched anxiously as Asuma unveiled his trump card. Kakashi, observing with that calm detachment of his, knew Obito's strength intimately. On paper, Asuma's combination might threaten Obito, but Kakashi doubted it would be enough. Obito showed no fear in the face of the roaring flames. Having entered flame-breathing chakra mode, fire was the last thing he feared. He could have dodged with flame resistance, but he preferred a flashier answer. Obito's breathings hifted, the chakra within him ignited and his aura climbed. Fire release, fire dragon flame bullet. His nature transformation and flame potency were magnified. He concentrated chakra in his throat, transformed it all into a single, monstrous stream of flame, and exhaled. Whoosh! Great sheets of orange-red fire shot forward, so hot that the small pond nearby instantly steamed away. The flames surged like a rampaging beast, threatening to turn the whole arena into an inferno. To be able to use such fire release at this age. Danzo's eyes sharpened. Not only had Obito awakened the Sharingan at 9, he possessed deadly proficiency in fire release. If he survived, he would become a formidable shinobi. What terrifying flames! Teaching him great fire destruction was the right call, Uchiha Yashiro breathed. In Yashiro's view, Obito's talent for fire release rivaled the best of the Uchiha, possibly even surpassing the current clan head, Fugaku. Boom! The 2 fires collided. Fire leaped into the sky, and fist-sized sparks rained over the arena. A clash of same-nature ninjutsu was a pure test of strength, and Asuma's flames, helped by wind release, were steadily eaten away by Obito's hotter inferno. I've completely lost. His fire release is ridiculous, Asuma admitted, feeling the heat wash over him. He had tried everything, 2 nature transformations and a combination technique against Obito's single, terrifying fire, and still been outmatched. Surrounded by flames, he chose to concede. The victor has been decided. Uchiha Obito wins, Baruhu announced. Such enviable talent. If only I had a Kekkei Genkai, I wouldn't be so mediocre, Baruhu murmured in admiration. Obito had shone in the chuunin exams. Obito dispelled the flames. Had they landed fully on Asuma, they'd have scattered him across the arena. Asuma laughed as he approached, punching Obito lightly in the chest. Though defeated, he wore a good-natured grin. Heh, it's fine. Your combination ninjutsu was impressive. I didn't expect you to be able to use two-element techniques in tandem, Obito said with easy camaraderie. Keep it up, Asuma replied. And if you lose after beating me, don't make me look weak. He waved and left the arena. Eliminated players couldn't return to the waiting room. He climbed to the spectator stands to continue watching. Raido and Kurenai met him there. What a shame. You might have won if you'd faced someone else, Raido offered. No regrets. I fought full out, Asuma said with a smile. Kurenai breathed a sigh of relief at his good spirits. Sixth match. Mei Terumi versus Haruya Moriyama, Baruhu called, and Mei rose to go to the arena. Haruya took a moment, then followed. Watch her closely. If nothing unexpected happens, Mei will be your next opponent, Kakashi told Obito. Haruya's preliminaries had been average. Against Mei Terumi, who had once bested Obito themselves, he was at a disadvantage. Obito nodded. He couldn't afford to be careless. Losing to Mei in the second round through carelessness would have been fodder for Kakashi's teasing. Mei's fight unfolded much as Kakashi predicted. Haruya gambled on a surprise assault to prevent Mei from casting jutsu, but he underestimated her. When his plan failed, Mei struck back with boil release and followed with water techniques, taking him down within a minute. Mei Terumi wins. Genma allowed himself a satisfied nod. Although Mei took a little longer than Metkai in his fight, she and the Hidden Mist were racking up wins. After 4 matches between Hidden Mist and Konoha, only Guy had beaten a Mist Shinobi. Every other match had gone to the Mist. The spectators felt it. Land of Fire officials were silent, merchant clients thoughtful, Konoha Shinobi wore dour faces, while Hidden Mist members couldn't hide their smiles. 7th match, Zabuza versus Shinya Osaki. Shinya fought fiercely. Konoha had already lost several matches, and he didn't want the streak to continue. He held his ground for 4 minutes, but strength told. He fell to Zabuza. Zabuza wins, Baruhu declared. Another win for Hidden Mist. The Land of Fire's representatives frowned. The trend irked them. Uchiha Yashiro sniffed that the Mist had simply had favorable matchups. If they'd faced Obito, they wouldn't have had this run of victories. Danzo's expression darkened despite the cheering. Genma, though pleased, stayed measured. He knew Konoha's examiners weren't weak, otherwise they wouldn't have survived encounters with Kisame and Mei Terumi in the Death Forest. 8th match, Gangi Hyuga versus Kakashi Hatake. Kakashi walked out without delay. Gangi Hyuga followed. If his opponent had been Obito or Mei, Gangi would have had little chance, but against Kakashi, he felt the battle was winnable. Byakugan and Gentle Fist were designed to shut down speed-based shinobi. Begin, Baruhu shouted. Byakugan, activate, Gangi called, chakra flowing and veins twitching at his temples as the world shifted in his vision. Lightning breathing, total concentration breathing. Kakashi fell into a state of extreme focus, his body and explosiveness amplified. Flash! Kakashi drew the White Fang short sword and surged forward, chakra and lightning release driving his feet. Gangi had barely formed a Gentle Fist stance when the blade was already at his neck. A scratch marked his clothing. The match was over in an instant. Those who had looked away for even a moment missed it entirely. Those who watched from the start saw only a yellow blur. Such incredible speed. Even if Gangi saw it, he couldn't have reacted, Hyuga Hiyashi observed, shaking his head. Kakashi's one clean strike left no doubt. He was among the strongest examinees. Kakashi wins, Baruhu announced, recovering from his surprise that the match had ended so swiftly. Some spectators muttered that it was no wonder. Kakashi was the White Fang's son. Hiruzen Sarutobi nodded as well. The decisive, instant kill called back memories of the former Konoha White Fang, and Hiruzen had been right to keep guiding Kakashi's development. An instantaneous finish was the best demonstration of sheer strength, and many cheered. Kakashi, however, remained composed. Defeating Gangi mattered little to him compared to proving himself against Metkai. What a show-off, Obito muttered, though he watched Kakashi with a complicated admiration. Seeing Rinzai's sparkle, He considered whether he should try being stylish like Kakashi next time. As expected of my best friend, Metkai shouted, giving Kakashi a thumbs up from the sidelines. He was already itching for a youthful duel. Kakashi's bout closed out the first round. After a brief break, the second round would begin. 326. Tsunade's Discovery, 4K. Rin, just do your best in the next fight. You did great in the first round. You'll definitely become a chuunin, Obito told Rin Nohara after a moment's thought. The first match of the second round was Rin versus Kasame Hoshigaki. Even though Kasame was an enemy, Obito had to admit the man was powerful. Not even Obito could guarantee a win against him. His fire release was pretty much useless against Kasame's water techniques. To be honest, I'm already happy just making it to the second round, Rin said with a gentle smile. She was thrilled to have beaten Nara Shiosui in the earlier round. Still, after the Death Forest incident had shown Kasame's strength, Rin knew her chances were slim. Her month of training in water release couldn't match Kasame's mastery, and while her strength of 100 technique packed a punch, it wasn't guaranteed to overwhelm him. Try to use Taijutsu and look for openings. Fight with everything you've got. Whatever happens, don't regret it, Kakashi advised. In his analysis, Rin's best hope lay in that raw strength of 100 technique. Second round, first match, Kasame Hoshigaki versus Rin Nohara. Baruhu's announcement carried into the resting room. Thanks, you two. I'm going to the exam now. Rin bowed to Obito and Kakashi and walked out. For a heartbeat, Obito wished he could take her place. But he knew Rin wouldn't want that. She wasn't the sort to back down. Kisame glanced past them at Metkai, who was doing a handstand exercise, and then left the resting room as well. If Kisame won this match, his next opponent would be Metkai. Kurosawa had already decided he would lose to Metkai if it came to that. Everyone had their expectations. Begin! Baruhu called and stepped back. Rin immediately adopted a water release stance and sprang forward. Gathering chakra in her feet, she used the body flicker technique to close the distance to Kisame in an instant. Strength of 100 technique. Rin clenched her fist, releasing a massive amount of chakra, and delivered a single, crushing punch. The opening surprised many spectators. This delicate-looking girl was charging a taijutsu assault straight at the fearsome Kisame. In the previous match, Rin had seemed more like a water release specialist, relying on ranged attacks, so this aggressive taijutsu was unexpected. Even more surprising, Kisame actually backed off at high speed, refusing to trade blows head-on. Rin's punch slammed into the ground with a thunderous crack, fracturing the earth and sending debris flying. This young girl has quite a bit of your style, Lady Tsunade, Jiraiya chuckled. Tsunade, who hadn't been paying close attention, looked up at Jiraiya's remark and saw the resemblance. Rin's striking power and chakra control bore a hint of her own methods. Kisame, who'd faced Rin head-on before, had no intention of slugging it out. He waited for her to miss, then moved in. Once Rin hesitated and didn't use her strength of 100 technique, the tide turned. She took several solid hits and Obito's fists tightened. Rin wasn't discouraged. She feigned openings to bait Kisame, hoping to trade blows, but Kisame refused to take the bait. Each missed punch cost her precious chakra. Strength of 100 technique demanded a lot of energy, and Rin's reserves weren't abundant. Every miss reduced her chances a little more. Rin's got too little combat experience, Kakashi observed. She hadn't been in enough varied fights. Her missions had been limited. The dangerous Raikage candidate encounter had mostly been handled by Minato, and during the Death Forest, she had mostly been on healing duty. Combat experience was crucial. Kakashi had easily beaten Obito before, because Obito lacked it. Now, a real veteran like Kisame was exploiting Rin's inexperience. Everything she thought of was obvious to him. Rin realized her punches kept missing and grew cautious, using the strength technique less often. Caution slowed her defeat, but couldn't win the match. Kisame wasn't in any hurry. The third stage of the chuunin exams would be intense, and he didn't want to injure himself for Must Guy. Rin's injuries mounted, and she grew more fatigued, but she refused to give up. She used medical ninjutsu on herself whenever she could to prevent her speed from dropping. Her medical ninjutsu is pretty good. This Rin Nohara is interesting, Tsunade said as she watched. The more she watched, the more Rin looked like she was training according to a familiar template. I'm curious too. She's Minato's student, but these things weren't taught by Minato, Jiraiya added. He and Minato had discussed his students before. Minato had asked Jiraiya for advice on teaching. As for Rin, she's actually my student too, Mu Yue said simply. There was no reason to hide it now. Jiraiya turned to Mu Yue, surprised. He knew Mu Yue was learning medical ninjutsu from Tsunade, but hadn't expected Mu Yue's skills to be advanced enough to teach someone like Rin. So it was you. When did you teach her the strength of 100 technique? Tonight you owe me. Make a beggar's chicken and a plate of spicy chicken to make up for it, Tsunade said, half serious. Mu Yue laughed. Strength of 100 technique isn't really a single special jutsu, but a style of chakra control. Teachable, not stealable. Cooking's no problem, but Rin admires Lady Tsunade a lot. She might come along, Mu Yue agreed. She had indeed been considering leaving Rin with Tsunade for a time. Tsunade might be slacking now, but she was still the top medical ninjutsu expert, and Mu Yue thought Rin would benefit from further study. Tsunade nodded, also thinking she might have Shizune learn from Mu Yue. Mu Yue did have a knack for teaching. In the end, Rin collapsed from sheer exhaustion, her chakra and stamina drained, and lost. For the Land of Fire spectators, the result was another frustration. Rin had forced Kasame to retreat at first, but ultimately couldn't win. The chuunin exams were a showcase, and defeat put you a step below your opponent. Damn it, Might Guy, you better teach him a lesson later. Obito burned with anger, but the bracket draw meant he couldn't do anything. Kasame would face Might Guy next. Obito trusted Guy to win, so he wouldn't meet Kasame himself. Leave it to me, Might Guy said seriously. Rin was his comrade. He'd make sure Kasame paid. Second match, Might Guy versus Kurosawa. Baruhu's voice rang out, reviving the crowd. The stands buzzed. Konoha had suffered losses to hidden mist teams before, and the spectators knew it wasn't because Konoha was weak, it was because the mist hadn't yet run into Konoha's best. Might Guy, go! Finish him in one kick like last time, someone shouted. Use everything. Might Dai, hearing people cheering his son, was moved to tears as he stood and shouted encouragement. The venue thrummed with noise. From the distance, Guy couldn't make out every voice, but he felt the support and smiled. Winning the chuunin exams would strengthen his claim as the strongest taijutsu user. Kurosawa, meanwhile, was panicking. How could he possibly beat Might Guy? The only ability Guy had shown was taijutsu, but it was taijutsu that could drop Kasame with a single kick. Kurosawa had been thinking of counters since the drawing of lots, but nothing came. He wanted the win. The better his performance, the greater his rewards back in the hidden mist, but he couldn't see a way. Begin. 8 gates. Gate of opening, open. Gate of healing, open. Gate of life, open. Might Guy declared, immediately opening 3 gates and taking a total concentration, breathing state. If he resolved it quickly, he wouldn't burn too much stamina. Hidden mist technique. Kurosawa formed hand seals and unleashed a thick, dense mist across the arena, then used body flicker to leave his original spot. If he stayed put, he'd be vulnerable to Guy's kick. His worry was justified. The ground where he'd stood cracked under the force of an incoming strike moments after he left it. That proved Might Guy couldn't see through the mist, and if Kurosawa LD hide, he still had a chance. He created a water clone to distract and then planned to attack with his real body. But Might Guy moved again. Channeling nearly all his power into his leg and fueled by the chakra burst of the gates, he appeared before Kurosawa and unleashed a devastating kick. Extreme Leaf Hurricane. The kick struck Kurosawa and his clone. The clone burst like a water balloon, scattering water everywhere, while the real Kurosawa flew into the wall and stuck there like a cannonball, leaving a deep imprint. Without Kurosawa maintaining it, the mist thinned and dispersed, revealing the scene. Might Guy standing in the arena, and Kurosawa embedded in the wall, blood at his mouth and a defeated look in his eyes. He wanted to demand how Guy had broken through the hidden mist, but the words wouldn't come. Might Guy answered the question himself. To face someone like that, I once practiced fighting with my eyes closed. I can use sound to find someone, he said. For a long time, Guy had been helpless against Shisui's genjutsu. Shisui's genjutsu skills were so strong, ordinary counters didn't work, so Guy developed a fighting style to cope, relying on sound and memory. His first kick, based on memory, missed, but the second, guided by listening to the clone's movements, found the target. Kurosawa sank into reluctant defeat and closed his eyes. There was no shame. Metkai was simply unbearable to fight. Metkai wins, Baruhu announced. In a series of matches where Konoha had lost several times to the Hidden Mist, Guy's overwhelming victory stood out and drew loud cheers. Guy canceled his gates and breathing state and walked back to the resting room with a wide grin. He only needed one more win, and Kakashi 2 more. Then they might meet in the finals. Though Obito had fought strongly, Guy had an unshakable faith in Kakashi. He believed Kakashi could beat everyone and vie for first place. Perhaps it's the bond between best friends, Guy thought as he entered the resting room and gave Kakashi a thumbs up. Kakashi, who didn't fully understand what Guy was thinking, nodded back. Third match, Uchiha Obito versus Mei Terumi. Think with your brain more. Don't get carried away, Kakashi reminded Obito. Mei would be a tough opponent. I always fight with my brain, Obito protested. He felt he used plenty of tactics, and that each fight cost him many brain cells. Just wait to be defeated by me in the next round, Obito declared with a confident smile, then strode out to the arena. Zabuza, still in the resting room, watched him go and thought quietly, to assume he would lose so casually, that was something else. Losing to Kakashi once in the Death Forest was one thing, that kind of certainty stung. Chapter 327, The Might of the Flame Iron Mountain Impact. When the announcer called the names of the 2 contestants, a ripple ran through the crowd and dozens of heads turned toward the central arena. After the first round, the spectators already had a rough idea of who was strong and who wasn't. Ordinary people might not understand nature transformation ninjutsu, but they could judge power by the scale of techniques and how quickly the fighters won. Obito had unleashed a huge sea of fire against Asuma and left a deep impression. Mei Terumi had also dispatched her opponent with seeming ease. With one competitor from the Hidden Mist and the other from Konoha, everyone expected a dramatic match. Last time you beat me because I ran out of stamina, Obito announced confidently, but this time I'll show you my real strength. He still smarted over losing to Mei Terumi in the Death Forest. Ever since he had grown stronger, with the exception of Mu Yue and a few other disciples, he had been dominating his peers. Is that what you think? Do you really believe my last match showed my full power? Mei Terumi shot back, refusing to be outdone. Begin, Baruhu called once both were ready. Fire release, great fireball technique. Obito focused his breathing technique, formed hand seals, and spat a massive fireball toward Mei Terumi. He knew the great fireball wouldn't be decisive against her, but he had no better fire release for an opening salvo. Water release, water formation pillar. Mei Terumi responded, forming her own seals and sending out a water sphere 3 times the size of Obito's fireball. The 2 attacks met. The fireball was extinguished, and the larger water sphere continued onward. Even if it wouldn't deal major damage, Obito knew Mei could shape water into a water dragon bullet, so he dodged aside. Inside, Mei cursed softly. She couldn't trick him. He'd learned something about her. She cut the chakra flow to her water formation pillar. Her technique required sustained chakra to transform the sphere into a water dragon bullet without hand seals. It was an application of nature transformation. With no further support, the cumbersome water ball lost pursuit and crashed to the ground with a splash. Obito watched Mei calmly. He wasn't going to directly clash fire release against her water release. He'd learned from his last defeat. Mei, too, held back. She knew Obito's taijutsu outmatched hers. Still, neither of them stood idle. The arena had once been dotted with trees, but after so many battles it was mostly open ground with a single small pond left. Water release, water dragon bullet technique, Mei Terumi called, dodging a shuriken and forming seals. Her water took on the shape and intent of a dragon, trying to herd Obito toward the pond. Obito gathered chakra, used Soru to create distance, and ran for the arena's outer wall. Water release was stronger near water. Even this tiny pond could help her. Flame-breathing chakra mode. Obito intensified his breathing and entered flame-breathing chakra mode, boosting his physical abilities. He activated his Sharingan to sharpen his perception and slipped past the water dragon bullet, so it slammed into the wall behind him. He then drew a shuriken from his pouch, laced it with fire release chakra, and hurled it at Mei. Boil release, skillful mist. Mei condensed chakra in her mouth and combined water and earth nature transformation into boil release, spitting out a thick, yellow, corrosive liquid. It clung and corroded. Obito's Sharingan picked up a subtle change the instant his shuriken touched the liquid. The metal's surface had altered, almost imperceptibly. What kind of jutsu was this? It didn't look like ordinary water release, and it felt dangerous, Obito thought. Mei really had held back before. She spat 2 more mouthfuls of the corrosive mist. Cautious, Obito didn't countersummon. He dodged instead. The mist itself was easy enough to avoid, but then he noticed the initial spittle had solidified into a gray wall. A cold unease ran through him. Mei didn't make meaningless moves. She had a plan. Flame Fist! Obito concentrated chakra onto his fist and converted it to fire release, slamming the flaming blow into the gray wall. Boom! His punch and the fire tore a large hole through it. He stepped out and charged back toward the center. Mei Terumi felt the battle closing in on her. From the water dragon bullet onward, her intention had been not simply to attack, but to guide him to the arena wall so she could use boil release to build a semi-enclosed space and amplify her technique. Boil release had far greater destructive power than ordinary water release, but in such an open field, its strength was diminished. She couldn't instantly create a closed area in the open, and Obito wouldn't fight her in one voluntarily, so she'd planned to manipulate the battlefield gradually. But Obito had read enough from her previous jutsu and reacted too quickly. Using several techniques in short succession without result made Mei feel the pressure. She lunged for the pond to reduce the chakra cost of her water techniques. Obito, though, wasn't about to let her pass. After being chased and attacked for so long, his fighting spirit flared. Fire release, Phoenix Sage fire technique. Obito spat a volley of smaller fireballs. They weren't huge individually, but they came in numbers and covered more area than a single great fireball. Water release, water prison technique. Mei raised a shield of water. She couldn't dodge them all. Obito's flame-breathing chakra mode, though not perfected, let him simplify seals and cast faster. After firing more than 10 fireballs, he stopped, bursting chakra out of his feet and flashing forward to stand in front of Mei. Fire, leaf whirlwind. A flaming spinning kick struck the water barrier. The shield shattered, and Mei was sent hurtling backward. Water release, water formation pillar. Still half prone, Mei quickly formed seals again, pouring an enormous amount of chakra into a massive water sphere 3 times the size of her first one. It instantly swallowed Obito as he rushed in. Obito had prepared for this. He held his breath and pushed his breathing technique to its limit. Flame breathing roared through him, converting every drop of chakra into fuel to boost his strength. Mei tried to change the giant sphere into a water dragon bullet like before to stop him, but this Obito was not the same one she had faced in the Death Forest. In Akami Hideyuki's grueling training, Obito's flame breathing had evolved, granting him incredible power under extreme strain. Mei's hands moved quickly, and the water reshaped fast, but Obito's approach was faster. In an instant, he closed to 3 meters. Mei abandoned most of her control and forced the water dragon bullet transformation. It wasn't a fully formed, thick dragon, but it was something that could repel him. Fire release, blazing impact. Obito pushed flame breathing to full effect. His whole body burned with orange-yellow fire. He gathered chakra at his shoulder and, in an Iron Mountain impact stance, charged into the hastily formed water dragon bullet. Neither technique required hand seals now. Boom! The collision intensified the flames on Obito's body. The impact force and the searing heat combined and shattered the thin water dragon bullet. The audience stared in astonishment. Mei had been pressing Obito at the start of the match, but in minutes the momentum had flipped. "This Uchiha Obito is impressive," the Land of Fire officials murmured. Obito's flaming form felt more terrifying to ordinary people than a mere display of large fireballs. "He actually had a hidden card when he fought me," Asuma said, surprised. He'd thought he had drained Obito's abilities in their match. How does he do that, and why aren't the flames harming him? Raido Namiyashi wondered aloud, baffled by a fire release that didn't behave like other jutsu. Kakashi watched, nodding inwardly. He'd suspected once Obito was pushed to the edge, he would find a way through. When the flames on Obito's body died down and his victory made sure, Kakashi felt the urge to step in and help guide him. Fortunately, Obito had figured it out himself. With her jutsu destroyed, Mei no longer needed to maintain a chakra output. She sat there dazed as Obito, flames dying at the edges of his form, walked in front of her. "I told you I'd win this time," Obito said, his flaming hand aimed at Mei, who was half lying on the ground. On a real battlefield, he could have released the flames fully and killed her. "You win," Mei Terumi replied hoarsely, lowering her head. She wasn't a sore loser, but the loss stung. She'd shown what she had and now wondered how this would affect her standing with the village elders. She had prepared simulations against Metkai and Kakashi that now seemed wasted. "Uchiha Obito wins," Biruhu announced. The Konoha supporters cheered. Metkai had already won his match. Now Obito's victory made it 2 notable wins in the second round. "Did Konoha send chuunin-level fighters?" Genshi muttered. The Hidden Mist had deliberately selected several young chuunin and strong genin to overpower Konoha in this exam. The outcome suggested Konoha had done the same. Metkai's taijutsu, Obito's fire techniques, Kakashi's speed, were these really still genin? Obito didn't return immediately to the waiting area. He canceled his breathing technique, but left his Sharingan active. With its keen vision, he saw Rin Nohara smiling at him. He waved and answered her with a small, satisfied chuckle. Back in the waiting room, he bounded up to Kakashi and recounted his decisions from the fight at length, claiming he'd won through cunning and skill rather than raw power. "If you reverse the order of your account, that might be closer to the truth," Kakashi said dryly. "Zabuza Momochi versus Kakashi Hatake." Biruhu's voice echoed again. "Shh, let's see what profound wisdom that match will display," Obito sneered. Kakashi didn't bother to argue and walked into the arena at a steady pace. This fight wouldn't be about philosophical tactics. Zabuza's strength was average. Even Kakashi before training would have handled him. Now, after unlocking Transparent World and undergoing special training, it would be even easier. No text for this chapter. Let's proceed to the next chapter, 329, The Battle of Fire and Thunder. When Kisame Hoshigaki, the last of the Hidden Mist's examinees, fell, Yuan Shi's expression soured. His representative was gone, and he was stuck waiting for the Konoha fighters to finish, then for Konoha to sort itself out for first place. The 5 great shinobi villages were supposed to be equals. How had it ended up with only one representative in the semifinals? He swallowed his displeasure and wore a polite smile. Hiruzen Sarutobi, however, watched with a fond look. What a shame! That shinobi had water release far beyond his peers. He was only a hair's breadth from victory. Even Danzo, who rarely showed warmth, nodded this time. He had done much dirty work for Konoha, and the village had prospered under his and Hiruzen's efforts. Yuan Shi forced a smile and agreed. Mido Dai grinned broadly, giving Metkai a thumbs up from the stands. He may not have understood all the intricacies of the chuunin exams, but with a performance like that, his son was surely destined for promotion. "Guy is still the guy who never disappoints," sighed Shiranui Genma and Ebisu in relief. The fight between Metkai and Kisame had been non-stop high energy, worth every ticket. Many Konoha Jonin now remembered Metkai's name. Some of them had expected it would be impossible to fight inside Kisame's water sphere, yet Guy had managed to win there. One veteran remarked that Guy had never used ninjutsu in any fight he'd seen. "Perhaps his ninjutsu is weak, but with taijutsu like that, who cares?" another answered. A specialist can afford a weakness in one area if another is overwhelming, and Metkai's taijutsu had smashed through chuunin-level opposition like paper. The announcer's voice cut through the buzz. "Uchiha Obito versus Kakashi Hatake." Kakashi and Obito exchanged a look and walked out toward the arena together. Obito's tone was sharp with provocation. "You talk a lot, Kakashi. Let's see what excuse you'll make if you lose." Kakashi only smirked. "You should prepare your excuse too. It'll keep you from panicking when the time comes." Obito bristled. He had been tired of Kakashi's lectures. The younger boy wanted to show Rin Nohara that he was the more capable and reliable one. Kakashi, however, was confident. He still considered himself a genius, and that confidence didn't vanish just because he had been beaten before. "Fine," Obito said. "I'll let my flames speak for me." Kakashi smiled faintly. With the match about to begin, The crowd leaned forward. Some didn't care who took second or third. First place would almost certainly be someone from Konoha, but everyone cheered for their favorites. Obito has activated his Sharingan, noted Uchiha Yashiro. Obito's insight made him dangerous, and few trusted Byakugan techniques to match the Sharingan in a fight. Uchiha Fugaku, older and more measured, only shook his head. Kakashi Hake isn't simply fast. This match is hard to predict. The dense white mist shrouding the arena made the action inside hard to read, but the slash marks on the ground told a story of raw power. Battle start. Both fighters took a breath. Flame breathing. Total concentration. Obito focused, increasing his physical ability. Lightning breathing. Total concentration. Kakashi mirrored him. Fire release. Great fireball technique. Obito formed the signs quickly and spat a huge fireball at Kakashi. As Kakashi had predicted, Obito followed with flaming shuriken. Kakashi launched lightning shuriken. The two volleys collided and detonated in a cloud of smoke and flame. Using the explosion as cover, Kakashi pushed out a burst of chakra, moving with the extreme speed of lightning breathing. Obito's Sharingan had been watching from the first instant. He saw Kakashi's movement and didn't hold back. Fire release, Phoenix Sage fire technique. He spat a stream of small fireballs, forcing Kakashi to slow and maneuver to avoid being burned. Kakashi chose defense. Earth release, earth flow wall technique. A thick earthen wall with a dog-like head sprang P between them, blocking Obito's fireballs and temporarily hiding Kakashi. Obito laughed. This trick again? Do you think I'm still the same? In past fights, Kakashi had used cover to conceal his figure, then sent a shadow clone to distract while his real body burrowed underground for a surprise attack. Obito had been trapped by that before. He wasn't about to be fooled twice. Fire release, fire dragon flame bullet. Obito poured a tremendous amount of chakra into his throat and unleashed a sweeping torrent of orange-red flame across the arena. Earth release could shape and pass through the ground, but it couldn't withstand such heat. The flames cracked Kakashi's earth wall and exposed him. Obito peered through his Sharingan. A shadow clone? He couldn't tell if the figure was real or not, but Kakashi merely dodged and did not appear elsewhere. Obito realized he'd been surprised. Kakashi had actually stayed put behind the wall, and Obito had wasted chakra on a massive flame jutsu. He was relieved he hadn't gone into flame-breathing chakra mode for the fire dragon. The cost would have been enormous. He could afford to be reckless. His reserves were greater than Kakashi's, but not needlessly so. Still, Obito used the flames to compress Kakashi's space and limit his dodges. Kakashi was being pushed to the edge. Suddenly, he drew the chakra in his legs into his body, snapped his white fang short sword into hand, and became a streak of yellow electricity. Flash! Obito's Sharingan caught it immediately, and he strengthened himself. Flame-breathing chakra mode. He consumed chakra to enhance his body, dodging Kakashi's slash as fire erupted from his palms and surged forward. Kakashi pivoted with shave to avoid the flames. If Lightning Flash can't beat Obito, I'll lose, Kakashi thought. The Sharingan's perception made him cautious. Obito was difficult. His fire couldn't cover as much ground as Kasame's water, but it was intense, and Kakashi's speed alone might not be enough. Worse, the arena's trees had long since been consumed. The whole field had become a blackened wasteland. Obito continued to press with flame-breathing chakra mode. He used Phoenix Sage fire technique to fill the space with hot projectiles and force Kakashi into closer quarters. This mode burned chakra fast. He had to end the fight quickly. When they closed to 6 meters, Kakashi suddenly gathered lightning in his right arm. Lightning blade. Yellow lightning wrapped his arm and extended into the white fang short sword, forming a brilliant blade. He swung, the slash bit into the air with a scorching line. Blazing Flame Fist. Obito answered by combining Blazing Impact and Flame Fist. His body ignited, and he punched through a tide of flame toward Kakashi. He swung a layer of fiery defense around himself, but Kakashi's strike still tore a wound across him. Kakashi seized the moment and surged in. Flash! He was still not using his greatest reserve, Lightning Flash, but Flash was enough. Obito, already wounded, staggered and bled again. Not like this, Obito thought. Rin watched from above, Mu Yue and many Konoha shinobi too. He couldn't lose here and now. He wasn't the clan's dead last anymore. The flames on him flared brighter. his chakra driving faster and hotter. He clenched his hands together and spat a torrent of fire. Fire release. Fire dragon flame bullet. The arena became a searing inferno. The flames rolled forward from multiple directions like a rampaging beast, cutting off routes of escape. Kakashi searched for a way out, but walls and flames surrounded him. Was he holding back earlier? Uchiha Yashiro murmured, astonished. Even Fugaku's composed face showed surprise. Obito's fire release was absurdly strong for a boy of 9. Asuma went numb, thinking Obito's fire might be stronger than some Jonin's. Hiruzen leaned over to Minato. Be ready to save him, he said. He knew the fire dragon well. If Kakashi couldn't handle it, he could be in mortal danger. Minato stared at the arena, on high alert. Kakashi exhaled, composure hardening over surprise. Obito had improved from an embarrassment into a truly menacing opponent. Kakashi's promise with Metkai meant he couldn't lose twice. He pushed his breathing and body to the limit, aiming to use lightning flash one last time. Yellow lightning crackled and brightened until Kakashi was nothing but electric light. The thunderclap detonated. A streak of blazing electricity tore through the flames. It burst through the ring of fire and struck before Obito, blood sprayed. A long, narrow, burned slash marked the ground by Obito. The surrounding fire vanished as if cut away. I will win it back, Obito gasped, then collapsed. It will be difficult, Kakashi answered, voice calm even as he faltered, because I am a genius. Kakashi Hatake wins! The announcer's call rang out. With Obito unconscious, the fight was over. Kakashi, drained, stumbled and collapsed as well. The arena kept shifting, and the crowd watched in stunned silence. When Obito unleashed that massive fire-released dragon flame bullet, many thought the match was decided, but Kakashi pierced the wall of fire with a single lightning flash and countered instantly. Even Hiruzen Sarutobi looked genuinely surprised. He hadn't expected Kakashi to suddenly explode with that much power and cut through such a devastating attack. My rival, I feel your fighting spirit. Metkai clenched his fists, promising himself that when he faced Kakashi, he would answer that passion with everything he had, 120% if necessary. These two are unexpectedly strong, Asuma sighed. Having fought Obito himself and then watched Obito and Kakashi, he felt the gap between them and himself had widened. He had trained with Obito once. Obito had been a bit stronger then, but not by much. If Obito had used that level of Fire Dragon Flame Bullet from the start, Asuma thought he wouldn't have had a chance. Their strength really has grown. Shisui's calm face had shifted to shock. Even training together regularly couldn't push them this far. He was genuinely taken aback. Shisui felt a chill at the thought of fighting either Kakashi or Obito now. The odds wouldn't be in his favor. He had been Mu Yue's top disciple, undefeated in the team before. This new reality made him feel an unprecedented urgency to train. Perhaps they really can become the new 3 ninja, Jiraiya thought with approval. He'd been optimistic about Mu Yue's pupils, and their performance so far vindicated him. Not only the fighters in the final, Kakashi and Guy, but even Obito, defeated, had shown extraordinary strength. Rin Nohara watched the two fallen fighters with concern. Both had pushed themselves to the limit. Kakashi and Obito were battered and exhausted. Lady Tsunade, could you heal Kakashi and the others? They won't be able to continue the exam otherwise, Mu Yue asked Tsunade at his side. Konoha had allowed a generous rest between matches, but healing was still needed, and Tsunade happened to be available. Healing's no problem, Tsunade said, folding her arms, but next time you owe me a favor. My consultation fee isn't cheap. She was joking. Part demand, part tease. As long as it's within my power, of course, Mu Yue agreed. Tsunade likely wanted something trivial, good food or some such, so he accepted readily. If the request had come from someone like Danzo or Orochimaru, he might have hesitated. He wasn't scrupulous. He kept a flexible line about favors. In any case, Tsunade kept her promises even in a slump. With Tsunade's help, Obito and Kakashi were treated quickly and soon woke in the Konoha hospital. Obito complained as he sat up and saw Kakashi on the adjacent bed. Damn it, if I'd hung on a few seconds longer, maybe I'd have won. But you lost, Kakashi said calmly. You act like I've never beaten you, Obito said, annoyed. You have beaten me once, Kakashi replied, deliberately emphasizing once. A year ago, Kakashi could beat Obito easily. Now the balance had shifted. Kakashi could no longer claim such unquestionable superiority, and Obito felt the sting of that missed chance. Rin's voice floated in, and Obito turned. Mu Yue stood at the doorway. "Feeling better?" Mu Yue asked. I could fight Kakashi again right now," Obito declared, patting his chest. "My body's okay, but my stamina's not fully back," Kakashi admitted. "That's fine. We've extended the rest time for your injuries, so it won't affect the match," Mu Yue said, reassuring him. Kakashi nodded. He'd be furious if he had to fight Metkai at reduced strength. By the time the final match drew near, Kakashi had recovered. He returned to the chuunin exam venue with Mu Yue and the others and took his place in the waiting room. Seeing Kakashi back to full strength, Metkai beamed. "My rival, I can't wait for our match." "I won't disappoint you," Kakashi replied, composed. The announcer's voice, Biruhu, came into the waiting room. "Final examination, Metkai vs. K. Akashi Hatake. Examinees, prepare for battle." Kakashi and Guy exchanged looks. Guy flashed his trademark grin and gave Kakashi a thumbs up. Kakashi's mouth, hidden behind his mask, curled into a small smile as he returned the gesture. They walked into the arena side by side and the crowd erupted. "Guy, go burn with your youth." Mido Dai stood and shouted support. Guy couldn't hear everything in the roar, but he knew his father would be cheering, and he smiled radiantly. Obito, acting like an unbiased spectator, unexpectedly found himself rooting for Guy. He hoped Guy could thoroughly defeat Kakashi in front of Rin. Hiruzen stroked his beard, pleased. Whoever won, these exams had shown Konoha's strength. "Begin," Biruhu called. "Rock breathing, total concentration breathing." Metkai immediately pushed himself, opening 3 of the 8 gates and forcing his breathing to the extreme. His aura surged, the expelled chakra kicked up dust and shifted the air itself. Lightning breathing, total concentration breathing. Kakashi did not hold back either. He condensed chakra in his feet and prepared to move at lethal speed. Guy's heart soared. This was the kind of fight he had wanted. Leaf Great Whirlwind, he thrust his leg, charging like a green blur and sending a gust of wind. Kakashi reacted quickly, performing a nature transformation on the chakra in his leg to boost his own speed, then vanished from sight like a bolt of lightning. Guy's style was pure taijutsu, raw power amplified by the gates. Kakashi didn't try to block directly. While evading, he flung several shuriken infused with lightning-release chakra at Guy. Regular shuriken might have been torn aside by Guy's gusts, but these were transformed, harder to counter. Guy chose to dodge. Both were speed specialists. It was just a matter of who slipped first. Kakashi had more tricks in his arsenal and good ninjutsu talent. He believed that would tip the scale. After dodging, Guy pressed the attack. Earth release, earth flow wall. Kakashi summoned a long, thick earthen wall to slow him. Shadow clone technique. Kakashi formed seals and produced a dozen illusory clones without physical substance. They weren't effective against Sharingan or Byakugan, but Guy had no special eyes and hadn't learned the transparent world, so the illusions could still deceive. From the top of the earthen wall, Guy saw a dozen identical Kakashis. He drove his leg in. Leaf, strong whirlwind. The whirlwind kick dissipated many of the clones. Even the ones reinforced with lightning release vanished under its force. As the clones scattered, Kakashi's real body erupted from the earth, holding a blazing purple lightning in his hand. Guy wasn't surprised. This was a tactic he'd faced before. He had chakra ready in his palm. Leaf handblade. He unleashed a concentrated burst of force. Purple lightning. Kakashi answered. His hand crackled with violet electricity that spread wide enough Guy couldn't easily dodge. The purple lightning struck and staggered Guy, his bowl-cut hair flying in a white explosion. Guy's leaf handblade connected with Kakashi and sent him into the earthen wall. Kakashi touched his ribs, wincing. One of his bones was broken. "You've mastered this move," Kakashi muttered under his breath. He'd meant purple lightning to be safer at long range. Its paralyzing effect was strongest up close. In choosing to disperse it, he hadn't expected to be struck back like that. Kakashi sprang up and rushed Guy. Purple lightning caused a paralysis-like slowing. Flash! Kakashi used a speed move he could react to. He still struggled with full lightning flash, but could manage flash. Yellow lightning gathered on his leg. He performed a nature transformation and vanished in a streak of light. Guy tried to dodge, but his reactions were fractionally slower. Kakashi's blade found his chest. blood bloomed and he staggered. My response slowed. So that ninjutsu has this effect, Guy thought, gathering himself. He'd been struck by lightning release before without issue, but Purple Lee, Gotening's paralyzing component, was new to him. Too impatient, Guy, Obito muttered anxiously. Seeing Kakashi nearing victory made him uncomfortable. Guy should have been more cautious. Kakashi's array of tricks made a patient approach wiser. Mido Dai watched with a serious look. His son would not be derailed by a single setback. Kakashi was ready to finish it. He charged chakra and prepared another lightning flash. A surge of dazzling yellow lightning roiled around his body. The white-fanged short sword in his hand transformed into a lightning blade. He poured everything into that final strike. Guy laughed, blood dripping from his chest, muscles burning with needles of pain, yet he smiled wide, the gleam of true satisfaction on his face. He had spent years chasing Kakashi's brilliance. Back when others were learning basic clone technique, Kakashi had mastered shadow clone. When others were still practicing aim, Kakashi hit bullseyes with ease. Guy had been last in everything then, crushed by that genius. Yet he believed he could catch up. He had trained relentlessly and had once finally beaten Kakashi a few months ago. One victory hadn't been enough. Now he had rock breathing from Mu Yue, the 8 gates from his father, and Taijutsu from Teacher Chen. He wouldn't give up a victory that was within reach. He focused deeper than ever, pushing to the 4th gate that had not yet opened for him. 8 gates, 4th gate, gate of pain, open. A tremendous rush of chakra burst from Guy. His aura spiked, wind swirled around him. In an instant, Mu Yue's instructions, Mido Dai's drills, and Teacher Chen's lessons flashed through his mind. Lightning flash, Kakashi's yellow electricity erupted in a thunderous roar. The blade in his hand condensed with violent lightning release. The force was palpable even to the spectators. Kakashi, this move I've trained for you, Leaf Dragon God, Guy roared. At the release of the 8 gates, his entire body amplified. The rock breathing focused his strength, the gates bolstered his power, and even his wounds began closing. Teacher Chen hadn't fully taught Guy Leaf Dragon God. Guy had only practiced parts of it, but recalling Chen's demonstrations gave him a workable form. Mu Yue's rock breathing, Mido Dai's 8 gates, Teacher Chen's Leaf Dragon God, all combined, Guy's potential burst forth like never before. As his body spiraled, an azure dragon formed and charged, fast and solid in midair. Leaf Dragon God, he's actually pulled it off, Hiruzen murmured, surprised. Teacher Chen's Leaf Dragon God was a signature, difficult taijutsu known only to Chen. No one expected Guy to master it so quickly. The Jonin began whispering, impressed. Teacher Chen himself, seated and watching, was surprised too. The guy on that field was incomparable to the guy from the previous chuunin exams. In this state, he could defeat his former self easily. Obito retracted his earlier critique. This was not recklessness. It was Guy holding back confidence. The clash came. Yellow lightning met Azure Dragon in a tremendous explosion. The arena rocked. A wide crater formed at the center, marked both by lightning scars and sharp cutting impacts. Kakashi was thrown back, slammed into the arena wall. So strong, he panted. His lightning flash had failed in a head-on collision. Guy in this condition was terrifying. Kakashi thought Guy might even be strong enough to challenge Akami Hideyuki. Kakashi wondered if he would lose. He was injured, broken rib, battered body, and his chakra and stamina were running low. Lightning flash and flash had been used, and purple lightning consumed a lot of chakra. He wiped blood from his mouth and forced himself up. As long as he could stand and swing, there was still hope. He desperately tried to enter the transparent world again, his one remaining avenue for a desperate counter. The Leaf Dragon God flew fast. Kakashi didn't have to advance. The dragon darted at him. In that moment, Kakashi saw a dozen flashbacks, his own training, the mistakes in Lightning Flash. He had to refine it. His strength was waning. He had no time for anything but striking. Slash! He poured his remaining chakra into the white-fanged short sword, transforming it into a lightning-long blade, and swung at the charging Azure Dragon. A yellow blade of lightning flashed, dust roared, and a long, narrow, scorched slash marked the ground. When the smoke cleared, there was no dragon, only a green-clad figure standing amid gray dust. "My best friend, truly you," Guy said with a thumbs up, and then collapsed, utterly spent. The white-fanged short sword fell from Kakashi's hand. With his remaining strength, Kakashi returned the thumbs up to Metkai before he, too, crumpled. Kakashi Hadake wins, Baruhu announced. Kakashi had collapsed a few moments after Guy. Note, removed unrelated author comments. Damn it, he still won. Obito watched, stomach twisting, as Metkai popped a bottle of champagne to celebrate his own use of Leaf Dragon God, only to have Kakashi unleash an even stronger slash at the last second. Kakashi didn't collapse until a little later than Guy did. He'd clearly been pushed to his limit as well. Hearing Baruhu announce the results, Obito felt a bitter knot in his chest. Seeing Rin Nohara smile and then glance down at Kakashi with worry only made him angrier. He should have been the one standing there. I have to master flame-breathing chakra mode as fast as possible. Then let's see if he can take my fire release. In that instant, his motivation flared. He wanted to train all night and every night, get stronger, and beat Kakashi in front of Rin. Those two were incredible, Asuma said, awe in his voice. Both fighters had gone to the very end, showing strength no one expected in the chuunin exams. Those who had trained under Metkai were even more stunned. Many were Guy's old classmates who had watched him rise from last place to the top of his class and now to second in the chuunin exams. During special training, they'd always felt a gap between themselves and Guy. Now that gap seemed enormous. Nobody could tell how many years of training it would take to reach his level. Metkai, today your youth burned to its peak. I'm proud of you. Metodai crowed, giving his son a thumbs up through tears. Though Guy had lost the final match, Metodai didn't see his effort as wasted. This chuunin exams had announced Metkai's name across Konoha, a Taijutsu shinobi who could defeat many geniuses with pure Taijutsu. He'd only lost in the final second. After that last attack, both men had been spent. As a father, Metodai wanted first place, of course, but he didn't see second as shameful. Second had surpassed countless others. If Guy kept pushing, he'd reach first. In fact, Guy's rapid growth, entering the chuunin exams at 9 and finishing second now, had already exceeded all expectations. Keep this up and you'll reach your goal, Metodai vowed. Tonight would be a feast. The crowd buzzed about the duel, still electric from the final displays. Letting Kakashi follow Minato was the right decision. Hiruzen Sarutobi chuckled to Minato behind him. Kakashi had been dazzling today, more than he'd ever been at the Ninja Academy. Back then, he only dominated Konoha students. Here, with top talent from other villages, first place mattered more, and Kakashi's performance exceeded Hiruzen's hopes. Hiruzen hadn't only wanted Kakashi out of his shadow, he hadn't expected such a complete transformation, like a butterfly emerging from its cocoon. Through these exams, Hiruzen saw the makings of Konoha's next White Fang. Minato just shook his head. I didn't do much. Kakashi's growth is mostly Mu Yue's doing. When I became his instructor, Kakashi's inner difficulties had already mostly been addressed by Mu Yue, and the core training came from him. Minato wouldn't take credit where it wasn't due. Kakashi's current form was largely the work of Mu Yue. Minato could teach Obito and Rin the basics of missions and handling situations, but Kakashi had been a shinobi for years. There wasn't much new Minato could add. He admitted his own ignorance of breathing techniques and incomplete familiarity with lightning release and none with earth release. Mu Yue had been the more significant influence. I suppose so. But Minato, don't be modest. I can see they like you. If there really were a huge difference between you and Mu Yue in their eyes, Obito would have come to complain to me ages ago. Hiruzen said with a knowing look and a chuckle. Minato's humility aside, Mu Yue's impact must be real. Jiraiya, impressed by Obito and the others, turned to Mu Yue. What did you think about the final being between your students? Did you expect Kakashi to win? Mu Yue considered it. I only felt happy for them. I didn't think about who would win. After all, they're all my disciples. He truly hadn't predicted the outcome. Kakashi, Obito, Guy, they were all close in strength. Anything could happen depending on a single moment's performance, and as their teacher, he couldn't play favorites. During the fight, the moment Guy used Leaf Dragon, God Mu Yue had activated his Byakugan and seen Guy force the fourth gate open. If Guy had opened the fourth gate in a normal way and used Leaf Dragon God, Kakashi might not have won. Transparent World's effect scales with the user's strength, but Guy's body had taken severe damage, forcing that extra breakthrough, which was why he collapsed first. This wasn't a matter of will. His body simply couldn't hold out. The fact that he could still speak at all was remarkable. Both are badly hurt. Tsunade, why don't you go treat them first? Jiraiya suggested. Kakashi and Guy looked ruined, severe injuries across the board. I'll start treatment, but you owe me an amazing meal tonight, Tsunade said flatly. Heh, what's a meal without good sake? Jiraiya grinned. You're just trying to freeload my food. Tsunade shot back, folding her arms and raising an eyebrow. And if you bring ordinary sake, I'll make you taste my fist. Sharing the good stuff is fun, Jiraiya said, unrepentant. He agreed to Tsunade's terms and the group headed to the Konoha hospital. Shisui lingered a moment, then bowed to Mu Yue and left. Watching the battles had unsettled him. The speed of everyone's improvement left him unsure he could beat anyone but Rin consistently. He'd have to train harder. I'm heading back too, Obito told Mu Yue, slipping away once Shisui left. Why stay and let Kakashi wake up and mock him? He didn't want to be picked apart by the victor. If you win, anything you say looks good. If you lose, even your breathing's wrong. For now he had one plan. Train until Kakashi was recovered, then beat him. He'd already rehearsed the excuses in his head. Maybe he'd missed breakfast, maybe he'd been unlucky. In reality, he'd tell everyone he'd always been stronger. Mu Yue nodded. The hospital staff would take care of them, and with Guy and Kakashi in the same room, Kakashi wouldn't be alone. When he had a moment, he glanced at his system panel. Disciple Uchiha Obito has diligently trained under your guidance and gained some strength, receiving the reward. Fire Dragon Flame Bullet, Mastery Level. Disciple Might Guy has diligently trained under your guidance and gained some strength, receiving the reward. Reverse Lotus. Both Obito and Might Guy had earned upgrade rewards. They were useful, but not game-changing for Mu Yue. The mastery level Fire Dragon Flame Bullet was potent, but Mu Yue already had powerful offensive fire releases like Great Fireball Annihilation. The Reverse Lotus was more relevant. It fit Guy's taijutsu and could be taught to him. Mu Yue didn't see any chuunin exam-specific rewards yet. Those would probably come after the results were settled. He felt a quiet thrill. His 3 disciples had all performed exceptionally, and even Obito, once the lowest ranked, had reached the final 4. After the 3rd exam ended, Genshi summoned the Hidden Mist examinees who had reached the 3rd stage. Mei Terumi felt nervous. She expected criticism from Genshi. None of the Hidden Mist participants had made the finals this time. Only one had reached the final 4, and she had fallen in the quarterfinals after aiming for first. Even the arrogant Kurosawa bowed his head and entered the room obediently when called. Zabuza acted indifferent, playing the rebel, while Kasame remained expressionless. He'd been Hidden Mist's top performer, so any punishment would fall lightly on him at most. To Mei's surprise, Genshi didn't berate them. He simply smiled. You all worked hard. The village will remember your efforts. Though the final results were a bit worse than Konoha, remember this was a fight on their home turf, he added. Genshi's unexpected kindness flattered the Hidden Mist shinobi. This was Elder Genshi, second only to the Mizukage. If he'd cursed them, no one would object. They'd known they'd been outperformed. But Genshi didn't scold. Instead, he urged them not to forget their shortcomings. We can't let this mistake be forgotten. Remember the image of your defeat and use it to train harder. His words held a quietly stern wisdom. It wasn't that the Hidden Mist ninjas lacked ability. The Konoha team had simply been extraordinarily strong. Genshi didn't punish them. He wanted to cultivate a few geniuses and build goodwill. The ninjas left feeling that Genshi had been magnanimous, rare in the village of the Bloody Mist, where high-ranking officials seldom showed such warmth. Mei Terumi breathed easier. Not being blamed shouldn't hurt her prospects for Mizukage, but when Genshi called for 3 to stay, her stomach fluttered again. Kisame, Mei Terumi, Zabuza, you 3 remain. The others may go. Soon, only the 3 of them and Genshi were left. You 3 are Hidden Mist's geniuses, Genshi said kindly. Obito had been strong, and Mei had suppressed him for a time in the quarterfinals, proof of her power. Kisame needed no introduction. He'd nearly beaten Might Guy in the final 4. Zabuza, though not as polished as the other 2, was the youngest top performer among them. Kisame, your abilities are strong. I think you can train with the Anbu. And Mei Terumi, Zabuza, if you have any questions about water release, come to me. Genshi said. Mei's face lit up. Being able to be close to Genshi would boost her chances to rise in the ranks. She nodded repeatedly, joy and relief mingling in her expression. 332. Promotion. The chuunin exams were over, and life in Konoha settled back into its usual rhythm. Special training resumed the next day, and the results of the exams seemed to have energized many of the students, especially those in the specialized program. Konoha always had geniuses, but Obito and Metkai were different in the way they inspired others. People pushed themselves harder because they had seen peers rise step by step. Even if they couldn't match Guy or Obito immediately, they refused to remain where they were. A year later, Metkai and Obito would seem to have become unstoppable, almost like millionaires in terms of reputation, and the rest felt driven to catch up. Mu Yue was pleased. His special holiday training had been meant to show this group what the best of their age could do. In Mu Yue's observations, S-rank rewards reflected student progress. The more they learned, the more opportunities opened. Progress varied by element. It was hard even for a perfect fire release user to raise proficiency further, while those proficient in lightning or earth could advance quickly. Because Mu Yue taught so well, Jonin like Nara Shiosui kept pushing themselves in special training. Shiosui was surprised to discover that Mu Yue, besides being strong in all 5 basic nature transformations, was also adept at special forms like yin release. He couldn't be taught secret shadow techniques, but Mu Yue could answer many of his questions about yin release. 5 days after the exams, the promotion list was finalized. The Hidden Mist delegation prepared to leave Konoha then. After all, Konoha wouldn't hand out village headbands to Hidden Mist Shinobi, and they had their own promotions to attend back home. Mu Yue thought the Hidden Mist might be short on strawberry ice cream these days. Before they left, he'd seen Mei Terumi frantically buying cartons of it. She'd even insisted on giving him 3 servings as a return for his previous hospitality. You treated me to 2 servings before, and I, Mei Terumi, repay kindness with kindness. So 3 for you, she had declared triumphantly. She'd blown through the money the Mizukagi's assistant gave them for souvenirs, but Mei was delighted. Konoha's strawberry ice cream was a luxury the Hidden Mist didn't have, and she enjoyed it thoroughly. She left Konoha satisfied. She'd eaten well, gained the assistant's favor, and though she'd been knocked out in the quarterfinals, she had no regrets. I'll gladly accept them, Mu Yue had said with a faint smile, taking the cartons. He wasn't particularly attached to sweets himself, but his students would appreciate them. Mei watched him go with a pensive expression. He wasn't strange like Obito, oblivious and boisterous, but there was something different about him, a quality she'd finally placed. Mu Yue never treated her like an outsider. Even Obito, simple as he was, projected a subtle distance whenever he spoke to a foreigner wearing a Hidden Mist headband. Mu Yue wasn't close to her, but he spoke to her like a neighbor or a villager, and that lack of prejudice felt unusual. Mei shook her head and decided she was probably overthinking things. A few days later, the group was summoned to the Hokage's office. Obito came bounding in, already imagining grand adventures. Go to the Hokage office? Does that mean some impossible mission? Are we rescuing a kidnapped princess? Repelling an invading force? He asked, eyes shining. Minato smiled and shook his head. Those missions aren't for you to take. Kakashi isn't fully recovered yet, so I won't be assigning missions to you just yet. Kakashi and Metkai had been discharged from the hospital on the 4th day thanks to Tsunade's treatment, but their bodies still needed rest. Kakashi looked at Obito and thought that ninja novels had done real damage. Where had Obito gotten the idea of princesses and invasions? Obito was a little disappointed. You'll know when you get there, Minato said, keeping his secret with a friendly grin. Kakashi guessed before he entered the office. This was about chuunin and promotion. Being called to the Hokage's office in a group like this only made sense for that. He wondered, oddly enough, if the village might issue him another chuunin vest. He'd already been a chuunin. Should he accept another promotion? If it came to that, why not? Vests were consumables, and he had earned it at the exams. On the way, they passed a few other familiar faces from the tournament. Yo, Kakashi, how's recovery? Metkai called, flashing his 2 rows of white teeth. We just got out of the hospital yesterday. Recovery isn't exactly going swimmingly, Kakashi replied dryly. That's because I'm impatient for our next match. Metkai laughed. Losses didn't scare him. He believed in learning from failure and forging victory from it. If Kakashi had risen to leader, Guy was determined to rise above him again. Kakashi wanted to wait until his body recovered before throwing down another challenge, but once he could train properly, he planned to focus on refining his transparent world technique. Asuma joined them, and Obito's imagination went into overdrive. Maybe the third Hokage wants us in some secret department, or an elite squad, he guessed. Kakashi cut him off before Obito built a whole fantasy. It's probably the chuunin promotion, he said. Otherwise, why call me? Asuma agreed. Isn't Kakashi already a chuunin? Obito asked, confused. You'll see when we get to the office. Kakashi didn't want to explain the awkwardness of a chuunin taking the exams again. When they entered the Hokage's office, the reality undercut Obito's expectations of shelves full of dangerous scrolls and powerful tools. It was simply a large desk, windows, and not much else. Hiruzen Sarutobi wasted no time. Your performances in the chuunin exams were excellent, he said plainly. Not only did the scoring nin, but officials and spectators recognized your efforts. I have decided to promote all of you to chuunin. Nara Shiosui, Aoba Yamashiro, and Asuma had been eliminated early, but all had fought to their ability and were included on the promotion list based on overall performance. Kakashi and his teammates had shown exceptional strength, far beyond ordinary chuunin levels. Kakashi remained composed. He treated the visit as accompanying the others. Asuma exhaled with relief. The group's performance had simply been overwhelming. Nara gave a small smile, glad his hard work had paid off. Aoba, who'd met Kisame in the first round and worried about his promotion chances, relaxed into a grin. Metkai, ecstatic, puffed up. I'm the same rank as my father now, Metkai crowed. I'll work to reach Jonin like him soon. Rin smiled quietly. She'd feared holding the team back before the exam, but having fought her hardest in the third round, she could accept the result with peace of mind. Obito was thrilled. We're chuunin, he cheered. Now Kakashi couldn't lord his chuunin status over him anymore. Hiruzen chuckled. If you're aiming for Jonin, you still have a long way to go. Keep working hard, learn from Mu Yue and Minato. Obito, focused on the promotion, only half heard the admonition about future ranks. Hiruzen continued more seriously. You can take on missions up to B rank independently as chuunin. For A rank missions, I'll need to arrange things, and S rank missions require a seasoned Jonin leader. That's fine. A rank is not bad at all, Obito said, ignoring the higher caveat. Hiruzen handed out promotion papers and pointed to the chuunin vests. From now on, you are Konoha chuunin. You have more responsibility and will be sent on more dangerous missions. Obito's voice was full of the will of fire. No matter how dangerous, I'll protect Konoha. Hiruzen nodded, seeing potential in him, perhaps a future Uchiha Kagami. With nothing further to discuss, the group departed, except for Asuma, who lingered. Is there anything else? Asuma said. If not, I'll go train. Hiruzen called him back. Your vacuum sphere's aura is too dispersed. With better focus, it could pierce the Phoenix Sage fire technique. And your great fire technique, your flame temperature is too low. As if you know everything, Asuma muttered, scowling as he stepped through the door. Hiruzen added one last thing as Asuma left. That last combination ninjutsu, though, that was good. Overall, your performance was acceptable. 333. Disciples explode gold coins. Asuma froze mid-step, wondering if he'd misheard. It wasn't the kind of praise he'd always hoped for. No, I'm proud of you, or you did well. But it was still a kind of acknowledgement he had never before received from his father. When he'd topped the practical combat rankings at the Ninja Academy, he'd rushed home to tell Hiruzen Sarutobi, but Hiruzen had only given a flat, as if it were nothing. Back then, Asuma had wanted to hear, even once, that his father was proud. Asuma still admired Hiruzen in those days. He was the Hokage, after all, the figure everyone looked up to. No matter what Asuma achieved at the academy, Hiruzen never offered praise. Over time, Asuma's expectations dwindled. Once he wanted accolades, later he would have been satisfied with a single approving nod. But Hiruzen never nodded. All Asuma could remember were lectures. Learn from your calm older brother, and model yourself after Orochimaru during his academy days, Hiruzen would say. You don't have to tell me. This is Mu Yue sensei's teaching, Asuma said with a pout. His face toward Hiruzen was still reluctant, but the tension in the room had eased considerably. Hiruzen exhaled a plume of white smoke. If there's anything you don't understand, ask me. I've had a fair bit of experience with combination ninjutsu. Asuma raised an eyebrow. He didn't question Hiruzen's knowledge or strength. Being Hokage counted for a lot, but teaching ability was another matter. You can teach well? Hiruzen blinked, affronted. Then I'll teach Mu Yue first and let him teach you? He was speechless that Asuma would openly doubt his teaching. Asuma brightened. The idea of Mu Yue teaching him instead of Hiruzen? That sounded promising. I think that's reliable. Go practice, Hiruzen said, rubbing his forehead as if urging the child out the door. Asuma hummed a little tune and left the Hokage's office, even closing the door gently behind him. Hiruzen sighed and returned to his paperwork. Not long after, the door opened again, and Danzo Shimura came in. Hiruzen, he began, but Hiruzen cut him off. Why didn't you knock? And during work hours, address me by my title, Hiruzen said, stern. Danzo paused, surprised. He'd entered like that countless times before without comment. Today, Hiruzen seemed unusually strict, like someone had lit an explosive tag inside him. Hiruzen, you. It's work hours, Hiruzen repeated firmly. Danzo, irritated but not wanting to provoke more, reluctantly called him third Hokage. Hiruzen's face softened. What is it? Speak. I want Kakashi Hatake and Uchiha Obito recruited into Root, Danzo said bluntly. Hiruzen frowned. Root doesn't need more chuunin. Expansion is out of the question. If I discover Root secretly recruiting again, I'll cut its funding. Danzo pressed on. Kakashi can be let go, but Obito must join. An Uchiha like him is dangerous. We must be on guard to prevent another Madara. Danzo's true target was Obito. He'd mentioned Kakashi only as a pretext. Tobirama's teachings, that the Uchiha were inherently dangerous, still guided Danzo. Obito, only 9, but already with a Tutomo Sharingan and excellent fire release, worried him. Danzo privately cultivated a wood release asset, but that child was much younger than Obito. If Obito turned like Madara before the wood release ninja matured, it would be catastrophic. Hiruzen puffed his pipe. Obito has the will of fire. Under Minato's guidance, he'll become something good, perhaps the next Kagami. From what Hiruzen had seen, Obito wasn't a danger. Minato's mentorship seemed far more reliable than Danzo's meddling. You've forgotten our teacher's lessons? Danzo protested. The Uchi are too dangerous. They should be controlled. Hiruzen shook his head. We should concentrate on intelligence gathering against other nations, not pulling apart our own village. He rejected Danzo's proposal outright. Danzo's anger flared. With Hiruzen's initial reluctance and this full refusal, he had no recourse. Hiruzen, you'll regret this, Enzo said coldly, slamming the office door as he left. Hiruzen returned to his duties, untroubled. He couldn't stop his own son from acting as he wished, but he wouldn't allow Root to grow beyond his control. Root had been set up by Danzo under the guise of training Anbu. It had started small, but, through Danzo's efforts, had grown into an organization that threatened to eclipse Anbu itself. Hiruzen would not permit that. If Root outstripped Anbu, disaster would follow. Danzo, walking away, grew ever angrier. In his youth he had not been inferior to Hiruzen, yet now he felt completely suppressed. If Sensei had chosen me back then, Konoha would be stronger, he thought bitterly. He wanted power, influence, one day to tell Hiruzen, I am the Hokage. Then he remembered a former subordinate no longer en route, Mu Yue. Mu Yue was serving as Obito's intern teacher, and Obito respected him. If anyone could give a clear assessment of Obito, it would be Mu Yue. Danzo hurried back to Root, wrote a letter, and sent a shinobi with instructions. Evaluate Obito, keep a closer eye on him, and if Obito acted against Konoha's interests, report it immediately. By using Mu Yue, an ostensibly harmless teacher, Danzo hoped to avoid alerting Minato's sensory detection. Besides, Obito wouldn't be guarded against Mu Yue. Obito wasn't strong enough yet to warrant dedicated surveillance. A few Anbu watched the Uchiha overall, especially during wartime, but that was it. Disciple, Kakashi Hatake diligently cultivated and achieved a perfect score in the chuunin exams, promoted to chuunin. Reward, Chakra .800, random bloodline limit extraction scroll. Metkai diligently cultivated and achieved an excellent score in the chuunin exams, promoted to chuunin. Reward, Chakra plus 1500, Taijutsu Extraction Scroll, S, Mastery Level. Uchiha Obito diligently cultivated and achieved an excellent score in the chuunin exams, promoted to chuunin. Reward, Chakra plus 1200, Ninjutsu Extraction Scroll. A Master Level, Extraction Scroll. The higher the level, the easier it is to extract excellent rewards. The rewards were better than Mu Yue expected. Just the chakra from the 3 students added 4,500, pushing his own chakra past 70,000. The other rewards were a gamble. Gotcha draws could be unpredictable. If he drew trash or duplicates, even a mastery-level scroll might be useless. But the system said high-level extraction scrolls wouldn't yield trash, so he felt cautiously optimistic. Mu Yue washed his hands, bowed mentally to every deity he knew, Taoist ancestors, Buddhas, whatever gods might listen, then began the draws. It didn't cost anything, so a little superstition seemed harmless. He started with the Ninjutsu Extraction Scroll, A. A massive roulette wheel flashed up before him, and Mu Yue realized the possibilities weren't limited to Naruto-style ninjutsu. Skills from other worlds could be localized too. He tapped the center. The wheel spun, then slowed. A skill highlighted and information flowed into his mind. Ninjutsu Extraction Scroll, a consumed. Obtained skill, Fire Style, Orochi Nagi level. Fire Style, Orochi Nagi was a deadly technique from the ancient Kusanagi-ryu. Mu Yue didn't know how it was used in the King of Fighters world, but after localization it became a powerful fire release, well suited to someone who trained in flame breathing. Next, he used the Taijutsu Extraction Scroll S. Taijutsu Extraction Scroll S consumed. Obtained skill, Murong Legend, Blade Intercepting Sword, Golden Skyline, Mastery Level. Mu Yue was pleasantly surprised. Golden Skyline matched his memory of a lethal taijutsu. It resembled the Third Reike's Hell Stab in that both used finger strikes, but Golden Skyline was distinct. It didn't grow stronger with fewer fingers, and it didn't involve nature transformation. The localized Golden Skyline was pure body technique taijutsu. Trained to a high level, it could unleash enormous force without relying on chakra. That fit its origin. Developed in another world by a person with no supernatural aids, it pushed the physical body to extremes. Mu Yue thought it suited Metkai perfectly. The others would likely struggle to learn it. Finally, Mu Yue risked the Bloodline Limit Extraction Scroll. This one had no level and required pure luck. Rinnegan and Tenseigan were on the possible list, as were Byakugan, Sharingan, Explosion Release, Lava Release, anything classified as a Kekkei Genkai. He clicked. Random Bloodline Limit Extraction Scroll consumed. Obtained reward, Ice Release. Mu Yue exhaled. Not the Rinnegan, not the Tenseigan. But then he reconsidered. Even if he'd drawn Rinnegan or Tenseigan, he couldn't use them yet. He didn't have the chakra reserves to sustain them. Ordinary Mangekyo Sharingan carried severe side effects. Unless it granted an ability like Kamui, it might do him more harm than good at this stage. Ice Release wasn't glamorous, but it was practical. He could even make ice cubes to cool off in summer. He checked his stats. Name, high, 70,800. Skills, Golden Skyline Mastery, Fire Style, Orochi Nagi, Ice Release, Beginner. Mu Yue decided that once the special training ended, and once his Earth Release and Lightning Release nature transformations reached mastery, he would change his focus toward farming more chakra. He'd already mastered several proficiency-level ninjutsu across different chakra natures and had a number of mastery-level techniques. Those could handle most situations. First, he wanted his chakra up to 100,000. Then, he would choose future rewards based on upcoming fights or threats. If a particular enemy demanded it, he'd farm counter skills. Otherwise, he'd keep broadening his toolkit, becoming a versatile, hexagonal warrior. That evening, he read the letter Danzo had sent. Mu Yue smiled slightly. Danzo's plan to use him to keep tabs on Obito was cunning, and, Mu Yue thought, not entirely unreasonable. 334. War. Why did we both get knocked out in the first round, and you, Nara Shiosui, still became a chuunin while I didn't? Inuzuka Midori asked when she spotted Nara Shiosui's chuunin vest during special training. It's a bit of everything, Nara answered tactfully after a moment's thought. He couldn't very well tell Midori that she simply hadn't shown much combat sense or raw strength. If he was honest with himself, he'd say he'd become a chuunin partly by luck. This year's chuunin exams had been much tougher than usual. Candidates who'd fallen in the fourth finals, like Obito and Kasame, would have dominated a normal exam. If Shisui had run into any of those fourth finals contestants, he might not have passed. Against them, his skills would have looked weak. When the gap in strength is that big, even excellent tactics are useless. One kick, one strike, and it's over. There was no chance to set traps in advance during the exams. In a few months, Midori, you'll definitely be a chuunin. This special training has made you stronger, he added, hoping to encourage her. Midori glanced at their other teammate, Aburame Nao, and hoped Nao would train with her for the next chuunin exams. The exams happened twice a year. The next one wouldn't be a joint event between villages, and officials or rich merchants wouldn't be invited this time. Aburame Nao said nothing more than a calm nod. Midori grinned. Nao didn't show emotion often, so a nod meant agreement. Not only Shisui, but Asuma, wearing his own chuunin vest, stood out among the genin and academy students. Because the special training was only for genin and academy students, Shisui and Asuma were the only chuunin present. As two chuunin among so many juniors, and given Asuma's solid performance in the exams, some of the more outgoing students flocked to him for advice. Big brother Asuma, you're amazing! You learned 2 nature transformations. Apart from Kakashi Hatake, aren't you the only one? Kotetsu Hagane gushed. 2 nature transformations don't mean much. I still lost to Obito's fire release, Asuma said with a slightly downcast look. Losing to Obito's single-element fire jutsu bothered him. 2 combined natures hadn't beaten one focused nature technique. Keep at it, Izumo Kamizuki said, immediately thinking 2 natures could be countered by 3 or 4. If you could combine 3 or 4 nature types, could he block that with just 1? Asuma admitted Izumo had a point, but mastering many nature transformations at once was difficult. Both chakra and compatibility mattered. Izumo, though, had another idea. You don't even need that. There's a ninjutsu here that beat Konoha's strongest taijutsu user. If you learn it, Asuma, I won't say you'll definitely beat Obito, but your chances would go up a lot. Asuka, what? Beat Konoha's strongest taijutsu ninja? What technique is that? Asuma's interest was immediate. The claim was impressive. Izumo was about to explain when the break ended and training resumed. Everyone, continue training, Mu Yue's voice called. We'll tell you more tomorrow, Asuma, Izumo said as he stood. It was the last training session of the afternoon. Dinner was coming. Big brother Asuma, this ninjutsu will surprise you, Kotetsu said confidently as they walked back to Group C's area. Asuma smiled. He didn't truly expect such young students to know a secret technique. Powerful ninjutsu had requirements and were hard to learn. Still, they were his little admirers, and he enjoyed helping them. He returned to practicing wind-release chakra nature transformation, switching to fire release only when he hit a block. After a while, he noticed Kurenai Yuhi still training, drenched in sweat, and walked over. Kurenai, why don't you take a short break? Pushing too hard could hurt your training efficiency, he suggested. Kurenai paused, panting heavily. I don't want to be left too far behind you guys, she said seriously, meeting his eyes. In last year's special training, she'd been suppressed by Shisui, a rare exception she could accept, but Obito and the others' performance in the chuunin exams had shaken her. Before they'd been a little stronger than most, but this time they'd shown overwhelming strength. Kurenai felt she wouldn't last a single move against them. Even Asuma's sudden progress made her uneasy. Unbeknownst to her, Asuma's wind release had advanced past his fire release, and he could already combine wind and fire. Asuma sympathized. I understand. Let's train hard together, he said, then added gently, but don't forget moderation. Asuma's diligence set the tone across the training ground. Mu Yue's special training largely followed last year's pattern, an exam every 2 weeks to test results, score, and rank. Unsurprisingly, Asuma was the strongest overall in the course. Shisui, the other chuunin, couldn't match him one-on-one, so Asuma took first place in Group A on the first exam. In Group B, Gekko Hayate grew more prominent as training continued, though his top spot was condition-dependent. Mu Yue believed the gap between Hayate and Group B's runner-up was very small. In Group C, Anko performed surprisingly well. Second place was outstanding for a second-year student, even against some fourth-year candidates. Izumo and Kotetsu also did well for their age, but among everyone they were still middling compared to Anko. Mu Yue's class as a whole outperformed the third-year students. In the evening, Mu Yue returned to Konoha's main district. Shortly after, Minato Namikaze knocked and entered. "Sorry to trouble you, Mu Yue," Minato said with a hint of embarrassment. "Could you look after Kushina while I'm gone?" Mu Yue didn't ask for reasons, he simply agreed. "If I'm in Konoha, I can't do without Kushina's cooking." Minato smiled gratefully and explained, "Kumogakure has sent more ninja to attack the borders in the land of hot water. I need to lead some forces to support." Mu Yue nodded. "Will Obito and the others go with you?" Minato shook his head. "I've got an S-rank war mission. It's too dangerous for them. They can take missions on their own now, but not something at that level." S-rank war missions were no joke. Minato admitted ruefully that he didn't feel like a very qualified teacher leaving them now. Mu Yue reassured him. "They respect you. Don't deny yourself. Village duties have to be done." Minato thanked him again and took food to Kushina. Even as he departed, Kushina was the one Minato worried about most. A few days later, news arrived. Jiraiya had returned to the grass country battlefield. Perhaps in response to Kumogakure's offensive, Iwagakure was also sending more troops to press Konoha. The continent was in chaos. Iwagakure, Konoha, and Kumogakure were all at war. Tsunagakure and the others were dragged in as well. Only the land of water across the sea hadn't been drawn in yet. The great ninja villages were fighting outside their borders, mostly in smaller neighboring countries. Even the land of wind, after regrouping, had pushed Kumo into the land of rivers, pulling those smaller countries into the conflict. Mu Yue thought about the one major power that hadn't yet joined, Hidden Mist. Would they attack Konoha early, or stay on the sidelines? The chuunin exams had shown Mist their younger generation's strength. Mu Yue suspected the Mist might feel threatened and strike. Uchiha Madara was an even darker variable. If Madara controlled a Jonin in the Mist, he might manipulate Hidden Mist to join the war. The more chaotic the world, the better it was for someone like Madara to act. If he wanted to move against Obito earlier, stirring up war between Konoha and the Mist would make that easier. That was why Mu Yue had stayed low profile before. He didn't want to alter the plot too much, because changes made protecting his students harder. He knew, for example, that Obito would die in the Kanabi Bridge battle in the original timeline. If the plot stayed the same, Mu Yue could more easily save him. But events had already shifted. The incident in the Death Forest was clearly Madara's doing, and Mu couldn't stop helping Obito just because the situation might change. With enemies hidden and them exposed, the only sensible course was to strengthen himself and his students as much as possible. Logically, after the punishing special training of the chuunin exams, they should have rested. For safety's sake, Mu Yue planned a brand new brutal training regimen instead. "Good morning, Shisui. How did you know I became a chuunin?" Obito called cheerfully on the way to the south border forest where they trained. Shisui said nothing. Hey, Mu Yue-sensei, good morning," Obito added when they arrived, grinning. Becoming a chuunin had put him in a good mood even if he hadn't taken first place. "Good morning," Mu Yue replied with a warm smile. For some reason, despite the warmth, Obito felt a chill of foreboding. That smile gave him the uneasy sense that something unpleasant was about to happen. 335. 5 Homemade Ninjutsu. Today we begin the final phase of constant state training, maintaining the breathing technique throughout the day, Mu Yue announced. The point of constant state was simple but brutal. Keep the breathing technique active 24 hours a day. Obito and Kakashi's breathing limits had improved, but they still hadn't completed constant state training. Full concentration, or normal breathing, Obito scratched his head. If it had to be full concentration, he wouldn't last an hour, much less a whole day. Normal breathing is fine. You don't need extreme concentration, Mu Yue said with a smile. The breath for constant state was more focused than casual breathing, but far less intense than the full combat-level concentration used in battle. The training had to progress gradually. None of them were at the stage of maintaining it through sleep yet. Kakashi nodded. If normal breathing sufficed, he could take part even though he wasn't fully recovered. That sounds easy, Obito chuckled, picturing a relaxing follow-up to the chuunin exams. Of course, to keep you motivated, each lapse means one problem to solve. If you don't resume within 10 minutes, you get an extra one, Mu Yue added. Punishments were meant to sharpen their urgency. Obito and Metkai, who both disliked idle weakness, took the threat seriously. Obito's grin vanished and was replaced by a pale, foreboding expression. Problems again. Even if Mu Yue's drills had helped in the exams, Obito still hated facing black and white test pages. This training is grueling, Metkai declared as if facing a formidable opponent. Even he hadn't managed to maintain breathing all day yet. Given a choice, he'd rather spar a Kumagakure Jonin for another hour than do math problems. Mu Yue set everyone to work. All the disciples except Rin Nohara began constant state training. Rin had only recently been introduced to the breathing technique. Her water breathing hadn't even reached basic level, and she was currently focusing on medical ninjutsu. In combat, her role was primarily healer. She needed to save chakra for cures, not for long breathing drills. Mu Yue had tried to send Rin to Tsunade's for advanced medical training after the exams, but Tsunade had been occupied in the Fire Country capital and couldn't take her on. It was a pity. Rin had real talent. Despite their reluctance, everyone stuck to the plan. The training was hard, and it showed. After 2 hours, the first lapse was recorded. Kakashi, 1 lapse, announced the shadow clone assigned to watch him. Kakashi, you gave up already? Obito scoffed. It's just 1 problem. Do you think I'm like you? 10 wouldn't faze me, Kakashi said calmly. He had been drilling toward the transparent world. Each attempt demanded extremely concentrated breathing and drained chakra quickly. He'd temporarily set aside other practices to focus on that. If Mu Yue had been watching closely, he would have told Kakashi he was right. The student was very close. In Mu Yue's estimation, Kakashi's transparent world proficiency was already at 90 points, just 10 short of mastery. Obito only pouted, convinced Kakashi was being stubborn. Kakashi rested a few minutes and dove back in. He wanted to be strong enough to challenge Shisui someday. 2.5 hours later, the second lapse came. Obito himself. Flame-breathing chakra mode burns a lot of chakra, Obito protested, face flushed. He'd been practicing a ninjutsu, flame charge, that used too much chakra and broke his concentration. No one commented. They were all fighting their own fatigue. Obito rested and re-entered the breathing state. By the 5th hour, lapses grew frequent. Everyone had to concentrate fiercely just to hold the state. Even during lunch, Mu Yue required them to maintain breathing. By afternoon, it became even harder. When the day ended, Mu Yue announced the tally. Kakashi, 34 problems. Obito, 32. Guy, 31. Shisui, 28. Good work today. Go rest early. Tomorrow we'll do the same, Mu Yue reminded. Ed them. Again tomorrow. Obito nearly staggered. Since graduation, Mu Yue rarely ran consecutive problem-heavy sessions. Obito imagined mountains of test papers crushing him. If you finish constant state soon, I'll cook a big meal, Mu Yue said with a smile. That promise kept Obito from saying anything worse. He couldn't blame Mu Yue. If his breathing had been better, he wouldn't be stuck solving problems. Because the summer special training was still underway, Mu Yue sent a shadow clone to run constant state with Obito the next day, and took the main body over to teach the larger summer class. By then, the summer program was about halfway done. Mu Yue gathered Groups A and B together. From now on, Groups A and B will take classes together. Next, we'll learn ninjutsu. Group C would follow after a short delay. Its curriculum lagged a bit. We're learning ninjutsu? A student brightened. They'd expected nature transformation practice, but real ninjutsu on top of that was a rare bonus. Most of Groups A and B were genin. Being taught ninjutsu by Mu Yue was an opportunity few would pass up. What kind of ninjutsu? Shiranui Genma asked, remembering Mu Yue's first-day demonstrations. If Mu Yue was teaching those 5 techniques, it would be a huge gain. These are optional, Mu Yue said. If you think they won't help, don't bother. They're low-level ninjutsu I developed myself. To make nature transformation training useful in combat, Mu Yue had created 5 simplified techniques. Though he could teach powerful C-rank fire releases like Great Fireball or Phoenix Sage fire techniques, those were beyond most students. So he drew on his knowledge to produce 5 D-rank ninjutsu that were easy to learn. Fire release, minor fireball, he declared. Mu Yue spread the students out, formed hand signs, and exhaled a fireball about half a person high, its heat scorching the ground. Fire release was Mu Yue's strongest element. His nature transformation mastery was nearly perfect, so this D-rank fire jutsu came together quickly. He'd also drafted more advanced versions, a C-rank Great Fireball and a B-rank Fireball C. Wind Release, Wind Slash. A sharp gust sliced from Mu Yue's palm and left shallow cuts across a nearby tree. Of the 5, Wind was the hardest to make offensive. It required better nature transformation control. Water Release, Water Impact. Lightning Release, Electric Beam. Earth Release, Rock Spike. Mu Yue demonstrated the other 3 in quick succession. A water pillar spat from his hand. A stream of electrical current surged, and the ground erupted with jagged stone spikes. He explained possible refinements. Water impact could be narrowed and hardened for penetration. Electric beam could evolve toward a technique like fake darkness, then grinned. The reward from that S-rank evaluation had been a boon. He intended to keep the special training going and to expand these jutsu with time. These are Mu Yue-sensei's own creations. Asuma's eyes lit up. Even simple techniques from a ninjutsu genius carried promise. Mu Yue had once known only fire and water, and now he wielded all 5 elements. His students trusted his judgment. After the demonstration, Mu Yue set up 5 shadow clones to teach the elemental jutsu. Most students eager to learn gathered around the appropriate clone. Nara Shiosui's team didn't join. Family secret techniques served them better than these basics. Watching Groups A and B, Kotetsu Hagane and Group C felt jealous. "When will our group learn ninjutsu?" he asked one of Mu Yue's clones. "Based on your progress, in 4 days," the clone replied. Group C was slower, but they could catch up if they worked. That answer fired up Group C. They focused hard on nature transformation and found they met the requirements a day early. 3 days later, they too followed shadow clones to learn ninjutsu. 2 weeks into the new ninjutsu course, a practical exam let many students test their techniques in combat and gain deeper understanding. Knowing a jutsu and using it effectively were different skills. After that practice test, the special training entered its final phase. Originally, it had been 5 weeks, but many students begged Mu Yue for more. "There's still so much I don't understand. We've got the holidays. Teach us longer," they pleaded. "If extra classes aren't possible, at least don't give us weekends off before school starts," they begged, reluctant to lose these lessons. Mu Yue couldn't refuse. More work was tiring, but the students' progress and gratitude were rewarding. He reported the change to Hiruzen Sarutobi during one of his visits. Mu Yue liked to consult Hiruzen about ninjutsu, show his progress, and update the Hokage on the training. "If the students want it, add a week," Hiruzen mused, stroking his goatee. "But it will be hard on you, Mu Yue." "I don't mind if I'm tired. If they learn something useful, it's worth it," Mu Yue said earnestly. Hiruzen was impressed. A ninja of Mu Yue's ability could earn big rewards doing missions, yet he chose to teach. "If every teacher were like you, our students would be much stronger," Hiruzen said. He promised extra compensation and began considering a formal position upgrade at the ninja school. Mu Yue had essentially reached the top of the regular teaching ranks. To promote him further would require creating a new post. Hiruzen decided that, pending the final exam, he would appoint Mu Yue vice principal, a position that had never before existed beneath the Hokage. Mu Yue also briefly demonstrated his 5 original ninjutsu for Hiruzen. Simple, but thoughtful, the old Hokage approved. When the school term resumed, those teachers would be surprised at what their students had learned. The extra week was added to the special training. The students got tired, but they also learned more than they had imagined possible. Exactly the result Mu Yue had hoped for. After a week of constant state training, Obito kept coming back to the same 3 questions. Where did I come from? Who am I? Where am I going? It wasn't that he suddenly wanted to become a philosopher. Thinking about those questions was just a lot easier than doing the problem sets Mu Yue kept handing out. Obito could reliably finish about 10 problems a day. After that, his answers started to look like scribbles. Even though his mastery of the breathing technique was improving, Mu Yue had given him 15 problems just yesterday. No matter how diligently he worked, the debt kept piling up. Is this what being a chuunin is like? Is there an exam to go back to Genin? I want to test back into Genin, Obito grumbled. He missed Genin life. There's no such exam, Obito. What are you talking about? Rin Nohara laughed. Promotions had exams, demotions didn't. Obito looked at Rin with a pout. She was the only one among Mu Yue's students who hadn't been assigned the problem drills. If it had been anyone else, he would have dragged them down with him. Besides, Teacher Mu Yue didn't set a time limit, Rin added gently. So you can take your time. You wouldn't understand this kind of pain, Rin, Obito sighed. The thought of that ever-growing stack of problems gave him a headache. He couldn't even compare himself to Kakashi anymore. His only goal was to master constant state and end this special training. Metkai felt the same. He and Obito were theoretical brothers in suffering. Keeping the breathing technique active wore out their bodies, and then they had to grind through theory problems that taxed their minds. The double strain made them desperate for progress. Another week passed. Obito was the first to maintain the breathing technique for the entire training session. The others soon reached the standard as well. Is it finally over, these painful days? Obito clenched his fists, ecstatic, happier than when he'd become a chuunin. Successfully completing such arduous training makes youth shine even brighter. Metkai cheered, giving himself a thumbs up. Still a little short, Kakashi murmured. He sensed the gap to that clear, effortless state was just a thin sheet of paper, but a stubborn sheet none of them could tear through yet. I can't relax. I need more training. Since the chuunin exams, Shisui had been quietly urgent too. Mu Yue adjusted his glasses, smiling an almost impossibly gentle smile. Over? No. The second phase of training has just begun. Of course it hadn't been that easy. Mu Yue wanted them not only to reach proficiency in the breathing technique, but to make it into a reflex that protected them even while they slept. Each step in the breathing technique brought a qualitative change. Reaching proficiency and maintaining constant state would be like a permanent buff, and it would increase their training efficiency. The goal of the second phase is to maintain the breathing technique even while sleeping. Obito froze. He'd misheard, surely, but the puzzled looks on the others told him he hadn't. When you're asleep, you don't have conscious control. How can you maintain the breathing technique? He asked. Mu Yue didn't answer directly. Can you breathe when you sleep? If I didn't breathe, I'd die, Obito said immediately. It was common sense, at least. Then why can't you use the breathing technique while sleeping? Mu Yue said slowly. Thinking it through, Obito couldn't find a flaw in that logic. Mu Yue explained the enforcement. Use shadow clones to supervise each other. If a main body slept without the breathing technique, the supervising shadow clone would strike and wake them. To prevent people from not wanting to wake themselves, they would exchange supervising clones. Each time you were woken up, you were assigned 4 problems. Cold sweat ran down Obito's forehead. Mu Yue's smile was gentle, and the day was warm, but Obito felt a chill. The previous phase had been grueling, but at least he could lie down and sleep. Now, the training would follow him into the night. Is Teacher Mu Yue that disappointed in our progress? Kakashi murmured. The intensity of the regimen was maxed out. No one protested. They all went through the clone assignments. Kakashi and Obito exchanged shadow clones to watch each other. Metkai couldn't use shadow clones, so Shisui's clone would supervise him. Mu Yue's clone took Shisui. On the first night of Phase 2, Obito lay down and tried to sleep, aware of Kakashi's shadow clone in the room. He steeled himself. I absolutely can't give Kakashi an opening. That guy'll be merciless. He mentally chanted suggestions to himself to keep the breathing technique active. Still, the first nights were always rough. Even though he'd prepared, a dream of courting Rin Nohara in a flower meadow pulled him away. Rin. In the dream, as his hand reached for Rin's, a sharp chop slammed into Obito's chest. The meadow vanished. The lightless training room closed in. Rin was gone. In her place towered a poker-faced Kakashi clone, ready to strike. Damn it! Just a little more. Obito wanted to explode. He wanted to use some fire release technique and obliterate that Kakashi. 4 problems, the Kakashi clone said blandly. The word problems sobered Obito instantly. He was training. He forced himself back to the breathing technique. Breathing technique, breathing technique, breathing technique, don't stop. He silently urged his own shadow clone as well. Come on, other me, don't let Kakashi have an easy time. His own discomfort was one thing. Seeing Kakashi make steady progress was worse. If Kakashi never got woken, what did that mean for Obito? But Obito had overestimated Kakashi. If Kakashi had been perfect on the first night, Mu Yue's punishment would have been pointless. In a dream sequence of his own, Obito pictured himself as an adult Hokage, wearing the robe and straw hat, reforming the Ninja Academy to abolish theoretical exams. Adult Kakashi sat next to him, sighing over the burdens of being Fire Shadow's assistant and babysitting the Hokage's foolish schemes. Back in reality, Obito's shadow clone noticed Kakashi's breathing becoming irregular and seized the chance, punching the Kakashi clone. "Main body, thank me. I helped get revenge," the clone crowed. It couldn't know what the main body was experiencing, but it was convinced the main body would appreciate it. "Kakashi, are you going to do it, or should I go easy on you later?" the Obito clone taunted. "No need," Kakashi said, exhaling deeply. The training was hard, but not meaningless. It would make him stronger to protect his friends. He also knew Obito wasn't actually offering mercy, just teasing him. Kakashi adjusted his breathing and drifted back to sleep, but the odd dream lingered. If Obito became Hokage, maybe the academy would be reformed that way. Ridiculous, but not impossible for Uchiha Obito, who could get obsessed and babble nonsense after doing too many theory problems. Kakashi smiled faintly and shook his head. With Obito's current state, Hokage was unlikely. Konoha expected the fourth Hokage to come from the Sannin. Minato or Mu Yue were much likelier picks for a future generation. Even if Kakashi thought he might have a better shot than Obito, he had no desire for the title. That night, none of Mu Yue's 4 disciples managed a full, uninterrupted dream. Fire release, small fireball technique. Anko finished the hand seals with precise, practiced movements, gathered chakra in her throat for the nature transformation, and spat a head-sized fireball. It left a scorched circle where it landed. She grinned triumphantly. "Heh, still me. Next time I'll definitely be first in Group C." Kotetsu Hagane, who'd only managed a few tiny sparks of electricity, stopped practicing and watched in silence. "Izumo, don't you think fire release is easier to learn? It seems like everyone who studies it picks it up fast," he remarked to Izumo Kamizuki, who was working on water impact nearby. Izumo nodded and considered it seriously. "I think so too. Maybe Mu Yue-sensei's best at teaching fire release, so he explains it better than other things." Anko bristled. "Is it that hard to admit I'm just that good? No matter how much you belittle me, my strength is real." "It's hard to believe," Kotetsu answered honestly. If he had to praise Anko as excellent, he'd rather argue with his cousin. Izumo, though, tried to egg her on. "There's only one genius in Class 1 in my book, Shisui. Since you've learned fire release too, why don't you try and challenge Shisui? If you win, the whole school will call you a genius." Anko wasn't fooled. The idea of school-wide praise was tempting, but she'd seen Shisui fight. His fire release a year ago was already stronger than hers now. She simply couldn't win. She'd only get beaten. Izumo sighed. Anko had so many of his little tricks worn off her that plain words rarely worked anymore. "Everyone, gather up," Mu Yue called. Students from all 3 groups stopped training and clustered around their teacher. It was almost time for class to end, but nobody headed home. Everyone was training. "The third Hokage has heard how hard everyone's been training. He plans to come observe and give guidance during the final exam," Mu Yue announced without preamble. That wasn't entirely new. Hiruzen Sarutobi had come last year, but he was still the third Hokage and popular with the students. The news lit a new spark of motivation. "Mu Yue-sensei has pull," someone murmured. "Hokage-sama didn't show up for the second special training last year. Maybe we should thank whoever was in charge of that second training," another student muttered. If they hadn't been so bad, Mu Yue-sensei might not have come back. The students remembered the second special training from the previous year, when the school had tried different teachers and realized just how much of a difference Mu Yue made. "Izumo, our chance is coming again," Kotetsu said, suddenly serious. "Yeah, a year has passed. Maybe Hokage-sama's forgotten us. We need to make a strong impression," Izumo agreed. In his mind, this was important. If he and Kotetsu caught the Hokage's eye, they could be assigned important roles after graduation. But besides enemy confusion technique, we don't have any flashy jutsu, and we already used enemy confusion last time. How do we show off? Kotetsu fretted. "I've got an idea," Izumo said, then retracted it. "Well, kind of. We could ask Big Brother Abisu for help. If he can't, then ask Big Brother Asuma." Kotetsu's eyes lit up. Of course they could invite Anko too, but Anko was too busy polishing her ranking in Group C to care. The two grumbled about her as they headed off to find Ebisu. Seeing them approach with hopeful faces, Ebisu felt a little dread. "Big brother Ebisu, we need your help," they said solemnly. "Teach us how to leave a deep impression on the third Hokage." Ebisu's mouth twitched. He remembered last year's special training and wished the third Hokage would forget all about him instead. Still, he offered a quick, mischievous plan. After the exam, follow Hokage-sama and challenge him. Use your best enemy confusion technique. Make your stand. Show him how determined you are as ninjas. Kotetsu and Izumo beamed. Direct, bold. Sometimes that worked. After a week in Phase 2 of Mu Yue's training, Obito finally understood what real grueling training felt like. Days were for training. After returning home, he had to do homework. Then he'd be roused in the middle of the night to train more. Every morning, he would dispel his shadow clone and still feel the fatigue of the previous night's broken sleep. He was so drained, he often spent breaks with his eyes closed instead of talking to Rin. Everyone felt the strain. The schedule left little more than training and sleeping, but the results were noticeable. While it wasn't guaranteed they would maintain it through nightmares and the like, in waking hours, the four disciples could basically sustain their breathing technique continuously. That boosted training efficiency and physical resilience. As if a protective mechanism had kicked in, they unconsciously completed Phase 2. On Saturday of the second week, Obito slept through the night without breaking his breathing once. Kakashi also had a solid night. Shisui hit his goal on Sunday. Might Guy finished in the third week. Guy's progress lagged a bit because he'd spent more time on the 8 gates, which set back his breathing technique practice. Completing Phase 2 didn't mean everyone reached proficiency. Only Kakashi and Obito hit proficient level. Shisui and Guy were still short. Kakashi and Obito already had higher upper limits. One had entered the transparent world, the other had half-activated his mark, so uninterrupted breathing pushed them to proficiency more quickly. Normally Phase 3, an even tougher version of the training, requiring 24 hours of continuous focused breathing, was needed to reach that level. After Phase 2, Mu Yue didn't immediately begin Phase. They went back to normal training for a while. After almost a month of brutal intensity and the chuunin exams still to come, the students needed a breather. During lunch, a couple days into the return to normal routine, Kakashi challenged Shisui. He'd been waiting to fight since he recovered. After the constant state training, he'd felt too exhausted for any matches. But now he'd gotten his edge back. He still hadn't forgotten the 3-match losing streak. Might Guy, Obito, and Shisui. Kakashi, who'd never lost to a peer before, had briefly doubted himself. He'd taken back wins against Obito and Guy during the chuunin exams. Now all he needed was to beat Shisui to restore his self-image as peerless genius, Kakashi. "No problem," Shisui said after a pause and a quick glance at Mu Yue. He knew his odds were slim, but he didn't want Mu Yue thinking he'd shrunk from a challenge. Mu Yue officiated as usual. The other students who were resting gathered to watch. "Go, Shisui. I'm rooting for you." Obito cheered, hoping Shisui would give Kakashi a good beating in front of Rin. "What a day of youth. After the battle, let's have a match too." Might Guy shouted, fired up. "Okay," Kakashi said expressionlessly, but only rock, paper, scissors. Might Guy's smile dropped. How was rock, paper, scissors the same as a real match? "Battle start," Mu Yue announced. "Flame breathing, full concentration," Shisui intoned. "Lightning breathing, full concentration," Kakashi answered. Both centered their breathing, letting their breathing technique augment their power. Shisui remembered Kakashi's strength from the chuunin exams and took nothing for granted. Kakashi, meanwhile, respected Shisui's reputation as a perennial prodigy. Fire release, great fireball barrage. Shisui formed seals quickly and spat 2 great fireballs at Kakashi in rapid succession. The single fireballs were a little weaker than usual, but the wider coverage tested Kakashi's reactions. Earth release, earth flow wall. Kakashi chose to block instead of dodging with lightning breathing speed. Dodging would have used less chakra, but Kakashi worried Shisui might have hidden tricks. He put up an earth wall to be safe. "He's probably going to use Shadow Clone to trick us again," Obito grumbled as the wall rose and hid the action. He'd been fooled by Kakashi's clones before and felt wiser for it. Not necessarily, Rin countered. Kakashi didn't use a clone during the chuunin exams last time. That's because he knew I was too smart to be fooled, Obito replied, pleased with himself. Rin only giggled. Metkai, though, watched Shisui more closely. He was curious how much the undefeated genius had improved. Shisui had been stronger than peers even in his first year. Despite all of Guy's efforts, he'd never beaten him. Mu Yue-sensei, who do you think will win? Obito asked the teacher, who sat beside him. Just watch. You'll see soon enough, but have more faith in your current strength. Mu Yue didn't answer directly. Instead, he offered a subtle encouragement. Shisui was undeniably a genius. His consistent top-tier performance at such a young age proved that. But the recent growth of Kakashi and the others wasn't just from drilling. It came from surviving real life-or-death ordeals. Those crises with the Kumogakure and the Mist Village Jonin had forced transformations no classroom could produce. Mu Yue could always intervene to keep his students safe. When they faced danger alone, they had to fight like real ninjas. That kind of pressure could change a person. The fight continued behind the earth wall, and the students leaned forward to see what would happen next. Shadow Clone Technique. As an earth release, earth flow wall rose. Shisui immediately formed a shadow clone and slipped behind a large tree with the body flicker technique. He didn't know what Kakashi might do next, so he hid and watched, activating his Sharingan to sharpen his perception. Kakashi leapt onto the newly formed earth flow wall and looked down at the shadowy figure. Whoosh! Whoosh! The clone hurled several shuriken to keep Kakashi at bay, then used body flicker to rush forward. Kakashi ran and bounded along the earthen wall, dodging the shuriken and colliding with the charging Shisui. They exchanged dozens of rapid blows. The shadow clone was beginning to lose ground. Shadow clones are solid but fade after taking enough damage, and the clone tried to retreat, only for another Kakashi to suddenly erupt from underground and grab the clone's leg. That unexpected move allowed Kakashi to land a heavy punch. The clone dissipated into a puff of smoke. Fire release, Phoenix Sage fire technique. As the Kakashi on the ground surfaced, dense fireballs erupted from the nearby tree and slammed into him. Boom! The Kakashi on the ground was consumed by the flames and vanished along with Shisui's dissipated clone. Lightning release, false darkness. Another Kakashi formed hand signs from beneath the earth and fired a piercing lightning spear. Fire release, great fireball technique. Still perched in the tree, Shisui formed hand signs and expelled a massive fireball at Kakashi. The lightning spear sliced through the giant fireball as if popping a balloon, then drove straight into the tree, splintering it. Kakashi didn't smile. At the last instant, a shadow flashed, and he narrowly evaded a hurled kunai. Whoosh! As Shisui readied another attack, a yellow lightning bolt streaked from behind the felled tree, an enormous, brutal slash aimed at him. Ambushed, Shisui didn't panic. He even smiled. Rumble! The figure struck by the lightning exploded, the fierce flames swallowing both combatants. That Kakashi always relies on clones. He finally got tricked. He probably isn't dead from an explosive tag, Obito muttered, eyes fixed on the smoke, itching to activate his Sharingan. How could my best friend fall to a ninja tool like an explosive tag? Metkai said, still confident in Kakashi. The smoke thinned and cleared. There was no one there, only scorched earth. Both of the earlier fighters had been clones. Before the spectators could fully process the shift, Shisui suddenly burst out of the trees. Kakashi locked onto his blood-red Sharingan. Phantom body flicker technique. The instant their eyes met, Shisui activated his Sharingan and formed seals. Dozens of Shisuis materialized on the field and surrounded Kakashi. Multiple shadow clones? Kakashi thought, but he shook his head. Creating so many true shadow clones would require an impossible amount of chakra, unless they were non-combat clones, which would only waste chakra. Kakashi tossed a shuriken at one of the figures, and the shuriken passed right through it. The struck Shisui neither vanished nor flinched. A bodiless clone? Kakashi frowned. That would be useless. But then several of the Shisuis closed in for melee. To Kakashi's surprise, these figures were solid. He pushed lightning breathing to burst free of the encirclement, and when he activated the transparent-like state he'd trained for, his perception cleared and he realized his chakra was in disarray. He'd been trapped in a genjutsu. So that's it. No wonder everything felt off. Kakashi understood. The Shisuis that couldn't be hit weren't true clones at all, but images created by a genjutsu layered with body flicker and shadow clone effects. As Kakashi steadied his chakra, the number of Shisuis on the field abruptly fell until only 3 remained. Shisui cursed inwardly. He'd only shown this jutsu to Mu Yue after inventing it, and it shouldn't have been broken so easily. He broke off his charge, intending to retreat. With the genjutsu gone, he didn't want to get close to Kakashi. But she wouldn't let such an opportunity pass. The 3 Shisuis were close enough to be eliminated at once. Lightning flash! Kakashi's eyes narrowed. Dazzling yellow lightning erupted from his body. Electric light flowed from his palm into his white fang short sword, extending into a blade of light. His chakra surged, his aura rocketing. From the sidelines, Shisui had only thought Kakashi fast, but without good vision, he couldn't see clearly. Facing him now, Shisui realized how far Kakashi had come. Boom! A lightning strike detonated as Kakashi became a blur of speed. The remaining shadow figures couldn't withstand the attack and dissipated, and the thunderous force sent Shisui flying backward at extreme speed. Kakashi wins. Mu Yue caught and treated Shisui, then declared the result. Kakashi's breathing returned to normal as the lightning faded. He sheathed his white fanged short sword and exhaled slowly, a calm settling over him. The match had been easier than he expected, easier even than his fight with Obito in the 4 finals, though he'd been injured then. It made sense. Shisui wasn't yet graduated and hadn't faced enough life-or-death trials to trigger the kind of explosive growth Kakashi had pushed himself through. Still, losing so cleanly stung Shisui. He'd never been beaten before. Kakashi didn't take Shisui's loss as a sign that Shisui wasn't talented. If they were the same age, Kakashi thought, Shisui would likely be a formidable rival. They shared the Sharingan and the same teacher's influence. Shisui's genjutsu, especially at his age, was impressive. Although you're excellent, I'm stronger now, Kakashi thought, smiling inwardly. He was clearly Mu Yue's strongest pupil at the moment. Aside from Rin Nohara, he'd beaten all the other disciples at least once. Obito, embarrassed by the defeat, muttered, if Kakashi hadn't been so cunning, maybe Shisui would have won, trying to downplay the result so Rin would think Kakashi's victory was cheap. You could call it resourcefulness, Rin offered instead. Obito clenched his fists, yearning for a rematch, but lacked the confidence to face Kakashi again right now. Shisui, having been patched up, thanked Mu Yue. Though he'd had a premonition before the match, he was Uchiha, someone who had never tasted defeat, and the loss left him bewildered. As Mu Yue announced Kakashi's victory, the world seemed to lose its color to Shisui. His undefeated streak was over. Is it because I haven't trained enough? Didn't think enough in the match? Why did I lose? He asked himself. He resolved to push his training harder until he surpassed Kakashi and the others. You don't need to overthink it. You've done very well. You're younger and not yet graduated, Mu Yue said, seeing through his disciple's turmoil. He gently ruffled Shisui's hair. Even the most composed person feels shaken after their first loss. Mu Yue knew that and spoke to soothe him. Is losing good? Shisui asked, looking into Mu Yue's light blue eyes. It depends. In this case, Shisui, you're already more than good enough. Mu Yue smiled warmly. The midday sun glinted off his golden hair. His kind words and steady gaze calmed Shisui. If Mu Yue said he was fine, then he was. Keep training at the same pace, Mu Yue added, brushing dirt off Shisui's clothes. Shisui managed a faint smile and nodded. Obito, not wanting to be gloatingly congratulated by Kakashi, walked away to prepare for his own training. Passing Shisui, he exclaimed, Shisui, your Sharingan has become too Tomoe. Shisui realized he'd been unconsciously keeping his Sharingan activated. He drew his short sword and used its blade as a mirror to check. Indeed, there was an extra Tomoe. The gloom vanished. Excitement flickered in his eyes. With a little more training, perhaps he could get his edge back. The brief Kakashi-Shisui bout revitalized Mu Yue's students' motivation. Recent training had been intense, and after a short period of relaxation, the group had become a bit lax. This match put them back on track. Disciple Kakashi Hataki's train in mission complete. Reward, chakra plus 2500 Chidori, proficient, earth release, earth flow spears, skilled. Mu Yue nodded to himself as the mission settled. The skill gains were good, and 2,500 chakra points was a generous boost. It pushed Mu Yue's total chakra to 76,000, a small but meaningful step toward his 100,000 goal. Disciple Kakashi Hatake has received an optional life mission. Life mission. True strength lies in protection. Main goal, protect your comrades, protect everything you care about. Mission progress, 0, remaining trigger count. Mission reward, determined by mission completion and strength growth during the mission period. Settlement occurs at each 50% progress increment. Note 1. If any comrade recognized by Kakashi dies, the mission automatically fails. Note 2. Life missions are extremely difficult. Once confirmed, the next life mission can only be undertaken after the current one is completed. Please choose carefully. Note 3. Greater difficulty yields higher rewards. The life mission appeared just as Mu Yue had expected. Kakashi's trust level was already 4. A training mission had previously occupied his slot, preventing life missions from appearing, but now one had unlocked. The content surprised Mu Yue. Unlike other life missions that issued rewards every 10%, Kakashi's only rewarded at 50% increments. Still, the presence of a remaining trigger count suggested Kakashi's progress might increase quickly. Mu Yue glanced at his other disciples' life missions. Obito was the furthest along, 9.8% progress, only 0.2% from his first reward. Part of that came from his connections. As Minato's disciple, he naturally leaned toward the Hokage faction, and his strong chuunin exam showing boosted his mission progress. Metkai mission had climbed to 5.1% after the third stage of the exams. Shisui's showed no progress yet. As a current academy student, he couldn't influence major events like the survival of the Uchiha. If the mission record gets better, progress should tick up, Mu Yue thought. Mission completion was essentially a ninja's contribution to the village. It mattered for anyone who might one day aim for the Hokage seat. Mu Yue remained curious about what rewards the life missions would ultimately yield. 339. Principal Mu Yue. On Friday, every student arrived at the training ground early, some even 20 minutes before the start. Everyone knew this was the last day of special training. After today, most of them might never see Mu Yue again. Students still in the ninja school had a better chance. Mu Yue didn't teach every class, but they could run into him at school. Those already promoted to ninja, though, would find it much harder to meet him. That made this final day especially important. Everyone wanted to leave a good impression. 10 minutes before the session began, Mu Yue arrived with Hiruzen Sarutobi and several other ninja school teachers. The students greeted them enthusiastically. Mu Yue returned their greetings with a gentle smile. Hiruzen nodded back cheerfully. A teacher glanced at the crowd in disbelief. There must be 600 of them, he said. The number was almost equal to 2 grades of the ninja school. Half the students were wearing forehead protectors, about 300 ninja, and some even wore chuunin vests. Ikeayu was stunned. There were chuunin here for special training? After all, ninja school teachers were usually chuunin themselves. Mu Yue spoke to the assembly. Groupings remain the same, Group A, B, and C. To improve instruction, however, each group will be separated further and taught according to chakra nature. Hiroaki Oshima, chosen by Hiruzen to assist in this last special training, couldn't help asking, how can teacher Mu Yue teach all of them by himself? Mu Yue smiled. I have to thank the second Hokage. It's difficult for one person to teach so many, but I can create shadow clones. They'll handle the simultaneous instruction. But the fatigue after the clones disperse, Hiroaki fretted. Shadow clones didn't reduce the original's exhaustion. If anything, the toll would be huge. Mu Yue waved off the concern. If the students learn well, a little fatigue is nothing. Hiroaki thought of the difference between them. Mu Yue wasn't just a chuunin, he was a powerful jonin, the kind who could stand against tailed beasts. Even so, Hiroaki worried the workload would be unbearable. He inwardly envied and pitied Mu Yue's position. Why divide them by chakra nature? Ikeayu asked. Because I need to teach nature transformation, Mu Yue replied. The teacher's surprise was visible. Past special trainings had only covered the 3-body technique and chakra control. Nature transformation taught at this stage was unexpected. The implications were huge. Shimono Hisanobu felt it most keenly. He'd sat in ministry discussions about improving ninja school training, and nature transformation had been a sticking point, too difficult to teach broadly at the school level. That was why the ministry had left things as they were. For Mu Yue to handle nature transformation himself, 5 different types no less, was solving a problem the ministry had abandoned. Shimono admired him deeply. Mu Yue's mastery suggested he could wield multi-nature ninjutsu like Hiruzen Sarutobi. Shimono guessed that in a few years he could retire and make way for Mu Yue. Mu Yue then set up the final exam. His main body stood beside Hiruzen to explain, while shadow clones presided over the matches. Group B and Group C were large, so he produced 4 shadow clones for them to run multiple battles simultaneously. There simply wasn't time for one-on-one matches for everyone. Group A was smaller and proceeded in the usual way. Hiruzen began observing Group C first. He considered it the truest measure of the training's success. Group C had the slowest progress, so if they performed well, Groups B and A should be even stronger. Anko Mitarashi versus Yayoi Kinuchi, a shadow clone announced. Both girls entered the cleared battleground. Anko immediately formed hand signs. Yayoi Kinuchi, who had the same fire nature, did the same. Yayoi was a little slower, but the fireball technique they were using didn't require blazing speed. Both spat out fireballs, but Anko's was noticeably larger. When identical ninjutsu clashed, there was no subterfuge. Quality decided the outcome. Anko's fireball swallowed Yayoi's, forcing Yayoi to dodge, and Anko seized the opening to finish the match. Hiruzen stroked his beard and smiled. No problem with this student graduating directly, he said. Mu Yue's class results were remarkable. Several students stood out, and Anko was one of them. A nearby teacher added, some genin who've already graduated for half a year might not even be able to use fire release like her. Another praised Yayoi. Her opponent's very good. She can even use fire release ninjutsu. Yayoi's homeroom teacher nodded. For an otherwise ordinary student, mastering nature transformation so quickly was impressive. Mu Yue's assessment was measured. She's more outstanding in practical combat. There's still much to learn. As for early graduation, he wouldn't recommend it, unless someone reached Shisui's level. Once a student graduated, anything could happen. After the first few matches, the teachers realized nearly everyone could use ninjutsu to some degree. The differences were in proficiency. Hiruzen, watching Mu Yue's 5 ninjutsu being used, noticed clever design and thought they were worth promoting to more chuunin and genin. The teachers were again surprised to learn these techniques were Mu Yue's own creations. Mu Yue responded humbly and continued his explanations, but the teachers felt a distance between his world and theirs. They moved on to Group B. As expected, Group B's average ninjutsu level was higher than Group C's, though given that Group B was mostly ninja, that was less surprising. By the time they reached Group A, the exam was halfway over. The remaining students were mostly strong fighters. Asuma Sarutobi versus Shiranui Genma, the call announced. Hiruzen and the others arrived as the match was about to start. The teachers went quiet and watched. Hiruzen, however, showed his usual composed expression as he observed. Shiranui grinned. This one ends here, but Asuma, don't be careless. I won't make it easy for you. Asuma had already taken first in practical combat twice and admitted he might be the better fighter, but Shiranui didn't intend to let him win without a fight. Their friendly private relationship didn't mean Asuma would go easy. They clashed in close-quarters taijutsu. Shiranui's skill was commendable, but Asuma shortly used wind release to accelerate his movements. Shiranui's lightning nature made him vulnerable to wind, and his lightning cultivation was only average. Once Asuma employed ninjutsu, he rapidly gained the upper hand and defeated Shiranui. A teacher remarked, I remember Asuma wasn't that proficient with wind release during the chuunin exams. I didn't expect such improvement so soon. Hiruzen only smiled faintly. He's just bullying a junior who's a year younger. If his opponent had been Kakashi or Obito, he still wouldn't have the edge. Nobody dared follow up on that. Hiruzen could joke about his own son, but reproaching others like that would be politically unwise. In a good mood, Hiruzen called Shiranui over, pointed out some mistakes from the match, and passed on a few small ninjutsu tips. Shiranui, who had just lost, brightened immediately. Hiruzen put his pipe to his lips and exhaled a steady stream of smoke. Watching everything in person felt more real than reports. When he returned, he could begin preparing for Mu Yue to become vice principal. Chapter 340, Special Training, Promotion and Rewards. When the last fights ended, Mu Yue gathered the students for a wrap-up meeting. With Hiruzen Sarutobi present, the Hokage naturally went first. He hadn't prepared a speech, but years as Hokage had taught him how to improvise. He praised the students for their hard work and performance in the practical exam, then commended Mu Yue, affirming the teacher's accomplishments. After addressing both students and teachers, he spoke about ideals and the future, closing with the will of fire. His words resonated with the Konoha Shinobi, and spontaneous applause broke out. Mu Yue kept his remarks brief and direct. He summarized the differences between the group test scores and the final results, pointed out everyone's effort and improvement, then offered a few words of blessing and a reminder. The third phase of the holiday special training ends here. Thank you all for your cooperation over the past month. I hope you follow the path you wish to walk. And remember, even without special training, keep practicing and improving your strength, he said with a gentle smile. There wasn't the same thunderous applause for Mu Yue as there had been for the Hokage. Perhaps a few people clapped, but their voices were swallowed by a swirl of conversations. We won't forget to train, one student called. We won't disappoint you, Mu Yue-sensei. It's us who should be thanking you for helping us get so much stronger. Mu Yue-sensei, when will the next special training be? Will you be in charge? The students' chatter mixed together. Some thanked Mu Yue for his guidance. Others wanted to know whether they could attend his future special training. With over 600 students in front of him, Mu Yue couldn't hear everything, but he noticed the important lines and raised his hand to quiet everyone. When silence settled, he answered simply, "If nothing unexpected happens, there will be another special training at the end of December. Who will be in charge will be announced then." Late December coincided with the end of the academy's second semester. Holiday special training had become a routine, twice a year now, but Mu Yue couldn't promise to be the instructor. Shisui planned to take an internship in his second year, which would overlap with the start of the special training. If Mu Yue supervised that internship, he couldn't simultaneously run the training. The students' disappointment was obvious. Many came specifically for Mu Yue's teaching. Still, goodbyes had to be said, and the students surged forward to bid him farewell. In a place the size of Konoha, meetings after graduation were rare, so they treasured the moment. Hiruzen Sarutobi watched them and felt a quiet pride at how popular Mu Yue was with the students. Even the Hokage himself wasn't as beloved in their eyes. The thought that he might take Mu Yue as his disciple after retirement seemed ever wiser. Within 7 or 8 years, Mu Yue's teaching methods could produce an entire generation of shinobi ready to support him in higher office. Mu Yue-sensei, this is from everyone, Anko said, handing Mu Yue a thick notebook. Last year, they'd bought a cake as a thank you, but this year, there were too many people to fit candles for 700. On Nara Shiosui's suggestion, they'd pooled money for a large notebook. Each student had written a message and could stick in a photo if they wanted. It was a practical gift that let Mu Yue remember names and faces. You won't forget us this way, right? Someone asked. Mu Yue accepted the notebook and smiled. I'll keep it safe, but I don't need it to remember you. My memory is good. Then, without using an appraisal technique or any gimmick, he began naming the students around him one by one. You're Asakawa Mikan, you're Nakamori Goichi. He had memorized every student's name and face, perhaps helped by memories from shadow clones or the residue of transmigration, but it was a genuine, detailed recall. Many who'd felt invisible in class were moved when he called them by name. A system message appeared for everyone who'd participated in the holiday special training. Under your guidance, students participating in the holiday special training have improved in ninjutsu and taijutsu, and their overall strength has increased. Rewards: Chakra plus 1800, Chakra Nature Transformation Experience. Scroll 2, Ninjutsu Extraction Scroll, Proficient, 2. The Chakra Nature Transformation Experience. Scroll increased experience for any mastered nature transformation. The rewards were generous. The more participants, the richer the return. Last time the program had granted only 800 chakra. This time it gave an extra 1,000 and added items that boosted nature transformation experience. For Mu Yue, the class rewards alone already mattered. By teaching so much, he had pushed his Earth Release and Lightning Release nature transformation to master level. Master level nature transformation rewards were rare. Getting them at all was almost absurd luck, but Mu Yue welcomed every benefit. Still, with Hiruzen watching, he didn't extract ninjutsu or use the experience scrolls publicly. After greeting the last of the students, Mu Yue joined the teachers. Hiruzen turned to him with a chuckle. Mu Yue, everyone recognizes the results of your special training. I underestimated your teaching talent. I didn't expect that one person could teach over 600 students so well and even have them learn your ninjutsu. Not promoting you would be to disregard your contributions. Shimono Hisanobu felt a chill. He'd suspected Mu Yue might replace him as head of the teaching staff someday, given Mu Yue's diligence and talent, but not this soon. Mu Yue had only been at the ninja school a little over a year. Seniority usually mattered. When Hiruzen continued, smiling and sweeping the room with his gaze, "What do you all think of Mu Yue serving as vice principal?" The gathered teachers went quiet. This was not a position the school had before, but Hiruzen had just proposed creating it for Mu Yue. Shimono's relief was small when he realized it was vice principal, not head of the teaching staff. But surprise still showed on everyone's faces. Hiruzen had, in effect, fashioned a post specifically for Mu Yue. The other teachers, many of whom were high-ranking within the academy, were stunned. Ikeya Yu, who shared an office with Mu Yue, felt an unfair pang of envy at the gap between them. After a moment, the teachers unanimously approved. Even former senior figures had never reached such a role. Mu Yue looked taken aback, then modestly protested that he was still young and might not be ready for such responsibility. He wasn't refusing. Higher office would make it easier to implement reforms. But formal procedures needed to be followed. The teachers would recount his merits, Hiruzen would speak again, and then, likely, Mu Yue would accept the position. For now, the matter ended with warm congratulations, and everyone dispersed. As they left, Kotetsu Hagane nudged Izumo Kamizuki and grinned. "Izumo, today our names get written in history." Izumo matched his excitement. "With our strength and the Hokage's trust, maybe we'll leave our mark someday." Kotetsu's tone turned wistful. "It's a pity for Ebisuni. Maybe this should have been his, but because our bond is so deep, he gave it to us." Izumo agreed, then brightened with a plan. "Let's make a shadow clone in Ebisuni's likeness and present it to the Hokage together." "Perfect. Even if the second Hokage were alive, he couldn't have thought of a better idea," Kotetsu laughed, punching Izumo lightly in the chest. The two dashed off in the direction Hiruzen had gone, brimming with schemes. Mu Yue returned to his home in the main district to rest. The teaching rewards had been good, but he was exhausted. He poured hot tea and opened his system panel to draw ninjutsu. The draw screen looked the same as before, though the available level seemed slightly lower. Ninjutsu Draw Scroll. B consumed. Skill acquired, Ice Beam Proficient rank. Mu Yue recognized the move's origin, an Ice-type attack. But he wasn't surprised. He recalled its training memories, a solid ice release technique, clean and powerful without unnecessary flair. He wondered if the draw would be influenced by his own nature transformation. Did he receive Ice-type skills because he'd started practicing ice release, or would the reward still correspond to learned nature transformation types? Initially, he had only fire release, but when he'd acquired elemental ninjutsu through teaching, the rewards had given corresponding nature transformations. He would need to test this further. He drew again. Ninjutsu Draw Scroll, B consumed. Skill acquired, Pheasant Beak, Proficient rank. At first he didn't know the name, but when the training memories loaded, he realized it was an ice bird attack, capable of freezing opponents. Two more ice release techniques made Mu Yue think he couldn't freeload any bloodline limits. Those were combinations of nature transformations and required special training or teaching to acquire. He might have to train them himself or rely on his disciples. Next, he used a chakra nature transformation experience scroll. The system displayed selectable nature transformations: fire release, perfect rank; water release, mastery rank; lightning release, mastery rank; and ice release, beginner. Surprised to see ice release listed, Mu Yue applied the scroll to ice release. A flood of ice release cultivation memories poured into his mind, an illusion of having trained ice release for years. When it cleared, ice release had risen from beginner to proficient. Skill, ice release, proficient 1000-3000, the display read. The effect was excellent, not only proficient, but with a useful amount of proficiency filled. He saved the remaining scrolls for possible future bloodline limits. Meanwhile, with Kakashi and Obito's breathing technique having broken through to proficient and their chuunin ranks, allowing them to accept missions freely below A rank, Mu Yue sent them on missions. Shisui and Metkai, whose breathing techniques hadn't yet reached proficient, continued special training. "I'm nervous," Obito admitted on the way to the Hokage building. "We don't have Minato-sensei or Mu Yue-sensei. What if we run into a Raikage candidate?" Normally, missions matched their rank and were predictable. Kakashi found that reassuring. "We usually wouldn't meet a Raikage candidate on an ordinary mission," he replied. "But even the chuunin exams had an accident," Obito argued. "A mishap during a major event was a worrying precedent." Rin Nohara intervened. "Let's take a C-rank mission in the Land of Fire. It should be safe." Obito snorted. "We finally can accept higher-ranked missions. We shouldn't back down. If we run from danger, how will we become Hokage?" Kakashi was surprised at Obito's resolve, then nodded. "All right, then we'll take a B-rank mission. Make sure it's far from any war zones." B-rank tasks generally involved Jonin-level opposition, feasible for a newly promoted chuunin team. Proud and a little showy, Obito strode into the Hokage building and made a point of announcing himself. "Uncle Sawada, good morning," he called, chest puffed and chuunin vest on display. "Good morning, and congratulations on becoming a chuunin," Sawada Kazuya replied with a smile. He liked Obito's enthusiasm as long as the boy didn't ask for anything reckless. "Hehe," Obito beamed. "Uncle Sawada, are there any princess rescue missions? They don't have to be in the Land of Fire." Sawada remembered a new request that had come in the night before. "No princess rescues, but there is a mission related to a princess," he said. The four of them paused, curiosity flickering across their faces as they awaited details.